Thank you. Well, good evening to you and welcome to this meeting of Western Area Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Phil Barnett, Chairman of Western Area Planning Committee. I'm going to make various different announcements. It's probably a little bit longer than normal, but it's obviously quite appropriate, especially in regarding when I get as far as the declarations. The other members of the committee present tonight are Councillor Clive Hooker, my Vice Chairman, Councillor Abbs, Councillor Colson, Councillor Gaines, Councillor Dick, Councillor Foote, Councillor Vickers and Councillor Williston. The following officers are attending to advise and support this meeting. To my right, Deborah Inston, the Team Manager of Development Management, Cheyenne Kirby, right over to my far right, the Senior Planning Officer. Next door to her is Sean Cutt, Senior Planning Officer, and to the right, okay, Harriet Allen, Planning Officer, Paul Goddard, Highways Officer. Hello, Paul. Paul Backus, and the Principal Drainage Engineer. Okay. And furthermore, I'm led to believe, and I'm going to ask the question on Zoom, is Jodie Wilson, Senior Environmental Health Officer, present?
Yes, Jodie's present.
I am.
Can you hear us okay?
Absolutely fine, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for attending. And furthermore, there should be Rebecca Hawkes Reynolds, Principal Conservation and Design Officer.
I don't have her on screen at the moment, Chairman.
She's not there. Okay. Well, members, you'll need to bear that in mind in case there was a possibility that she might need to be brought into the equation. Okay. Are we expecting her? She was obviously listed as attending. Okay. Okay. We need to keep a check on that. Okay. Yeah. And furthermore, we've got Thomas Radburn, who's clerking it, but at the moment he seems to be organising visitors. Perhaps I can continue on with a speech. And Gordon Oliver, to my far left, is the Zoom host. Shall I just wait for Thomas? Is he just getting more seats for further visitors?
Chairman, I'm told that we can't have any more seats, so he's arranging that they know about the live streaming outside.
Right, okay, fair enough. But I think it's appropriate that he ought to be present if I continue on.
I'll do the introduction without.
Okay, all right. I've just been advised that I can continue on the introductions. Before we start this evening's meeting, I would like to take the opportunity to remind members that we are subject to the Council's Code of Conduct, which requires us to uphold certain standards, including, importantly, respect. Members across the chamber might not always agree with one another, but I would ask that in our disagreements, we endeavour to always be respectful of other views. In regarding emergency evacuation, if we hear the alarm this evening, we must leave the building immediately. Please proceed via a safe emergency exit route, which is marked across the two exit routes, and then follow any instructions given to you by the officers. The emergency assembly point is in the car park at the Dolphin Pub. And I take it everybody knows where the Dolphin Pub is. If they don't, perhaps they put their hand up and we will give directions. But it looks as if from the nods, most people do know. If a lockdown alarm sounds, we must remain seated and await instructions from officers. We will then adjourn the meeting in such a time as it's safe to proceed. Do members have any questions in the way which we are going to proceed for the meeting before anything else? Can I have some nods of heads Are people happy? Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Moving on to item 1, apologies. Right, Thomas Radburn, apologies. I believe we've had apologies from Councillor Amatharaj, correct?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we've had apologies from Councillor Amatharaj with Councillor Martin Colston substituting.
Welcome to the meeting yet again, Councillor Colson. Right, I'm led to believe that the minutes of the previous meeting held in January are not available, so they will be presented at the next WAP meeting on the 18th of March. Now, moving on to declarations of interest, and I perhaps would ask members around the table if they got any declarations, because I've got several points to make from the chair. So going around the table, Councillor Foote.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. On item 1 on our agenda, I've received emails from objectors. I also am a Newbury Town Councillor. I sit on Newbury Town Council Planning and Highways, where this application came up. And finally, I am Heritage Champion for West Berkshire Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Dick.
None to declare, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hooker.
No declaration of interest, Chairman.
Councillor Wollaston.
No, apart from the email, I think that we've all had.
Councillor Vickers.
Pretty well the same as you, Chairman. I've been lobbied by opponents to the second and third items on the agenda, and I'm also a member of Newbury Town Council Planning and Highways.
Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, just lobbied quite heavily on the place of worship application.
Councillor Colson.
Same with me. Thank you.
Councillor Gaines.
None to declare, Chairman.
Okay, right. I'm going to make the following declarations from the chair. Like Councillor Vickers and Councillor Foote, I'm also a member of Newbury Town Council, and also a member of its Planning and Highways Committee, along with Greenham Parish Council, so as is Councillor Abbs. When the applications 1 and 2 on tonight's agenda came up for discussion, I abstained and made it clear I would do so, as they could well be brought to Western Area Committee or West Berks Council for determination, where I would make my decision tonight based on the evidence that's put forward during the discussions. Furthermore, concern was expressed, I know, by at least one of the objectors concerning that I've been well knowledge to some of the speakers tonight. I've been a resident of Newbury and West Berks area for 78 years, all my lifespan. It's obvious over 78 years, I know tens of thousands of people within the West Berks area. But I can assure you, I just know them just as acquaintances. Therefore, I've got no peculiar interest on any of these particular applications tonight. Furthermore, I think it's correct and proper for me to just make another observation. In the case of all these 3 applications to be discussed tonight, were subject to site visits last Thursday, albeit fragmented due to access of all the interested parties on site. I must apologise to individuals unable to access the sites, but at the end of the day, it's a prerogative of the landowner to allow access to who they feel is appropriate to go on their land. Thank you. Moving on.
Sorry, Chairman, if I may, just you mentioned me as being part of Greenham Parish Council, and the reason I didn't declare that as an interest is because I always abstain on any planning applications at Greenham. So
I mentioned them, Councillor Abbs, because they were adjoining parish. That's the reason why I mentioned.
so my default at Greenham these days is not to comment and not to.
No, okay, all right, okay. But I thought it was fair and proper because some of us are members of other councils, and that includes yourself and obviously Councillor Vickers and Councillor Foote. Moving on then to item 4, and we are talking about item 4 in brackets 1, application 25/01-669/FUL, and also the other application 25/01670/LBC, Hambridge Farm, Hambridge Road, Newbury, RG14 2QG. So moving on to this particular item on the agenda, and especially for anybody who's new to this meeting, I would briefly explain the procedure. Officers will present the applications to the committee, after which the following groups might wish to make representations for a maximum of 5 minutes each. And I just repeat 5 minutes each because there was a comment in relationship to extending it. We've got 3 applications tonight. They are not deemed to be major, so there's no opportunity or no need to actually extend the speaking rights. It will then be the following speakers in this particular order: parish/town council representatives, objectors, supporters, the applicant and the agent, and then ward members. The committee members will have the opportunity to ask questions of clarification of the speakers, and speakers will then have the opportunity to ask questions of officers. Members of the public and speakers will not be able to engage with committee members. Officers also outside this process, and that is quite important, and I must stress, either by calling out from the audience or sending any form of electronic message, email or text or WhatsApp. The committee will then debate the item before determining the application. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Harriet Allen, the case officer for the first application, to begin her presentation. Over to you, Harriet.
Thank you, Chairman. So as been stated, this item relates to 2 applications: a full application for planning permission and the associated application for listed building consent. This is to propose to convert buildings at Hambridge Farm into 3 residential dwellings with associated works, which includes boundary treatment to delineate residential curtilages and provide noise mitigation. Just to note that this is a reconsideration of previously proposals that were similar, but the approvals were quashed by a High Court consent order last year. The grounds are detailed in the report, but will be addressed where relevant in this presentation. It's being discussed today because the full application received over 10 objections and the officer recommendation is for approval. So for some context, the farmhouse is the building closest to the road in this image, and the barn behind it and the garage, but the farmhouse and barn only are listed. These are of 17th to 18th century origins, part of the Hambridge Farm historic farmstead, and are sited within the Newbury Conservation Area. They are currently under a lawful office use, and this is the location plan. The red line shows the area that's proposed to be converted to residential use. For further context, there's the industrial employment area 60 metres south of the site, open countryside to the east, and yes, within the conservation area as shown by the orange line on this map, and residential development to the north on Two Rivers Way. In terms of representations received, they are publicly available and summarised in the report, but just to summarise them now, the initial public consultation period resulted in 10 objections. As a summary, there were concerns with harm to the historic significance of the buildings and the site, in particular from the removal of the slits on the barn, which can be seen in this picture there, and a central partition and harming the internal layout of the barn, which will be discussed later. Also concerns that the existing access is unsafe and the residential access and egress would increase accident risk. Concern that the use would be in conflict with the neighbouring local business use, such as from noise complaints being raised by new residents. concerned with the loss of commercial space, the flood risk on the site, and that the works could cause harm to nearby river ecology. Following amended plans, further 2 objections were received, which raised new technical points on the noise, construction and transport assessments that were submitted with the applications. These objections are addressed in the committee report and again will be addressed in due course this evening where relevant. And 10 supporting representations were also received at reconsultation stage. Supporters stated the conversion would reduce vehicle movements compared with the existing office use. Flood risk hadn't been observed and residential use would be in keeping with other uses on the road. So in terms of this principle of the conversion to office to residential, this does accord with local and national policy. The site has been considered suitable for residential use given other residential uses nearby, and that the site would have its own access separate to the business. And the loss of commercial space, as set out in the report, has not been considered to result in a material harm to the vitality of the town centre, warranting a reason for refusal. So turning to the design proposals themselves, as this is looking at listed building consent, we need to consider the internal layout as well. So this is the existing floor plan. For members and those that haven't seen the interior, there's just some quick photographs of the inside. You can see the modern finishings for the office use, but historic timbers and the roof structure are retained. And this is the of importance, the central bay area, which was the original threshing bay, so that can remain appreciated as a feature of historic interest. So this is the proposed floor plans. As can be seen, the partition walls that are there are modern and would be removed and replaced with new partition walls. This would result in no harm to historic fabric, as all the internal finishings are modern. Of note is this full height partition here, which would be to the left of the bay area, meaning that that open threshing bay character will remain appreciable. And in the cross sections, it can be seen in one unit. So just to clarify, there'd be one unit this side and another here, and the farmhouse would be the 3rd residential unit. One of the units would have this partition would not be full height, and there'd be a glazed rail enabling the historic timber roof structure to remain appreciable. In terms of external alterations to the buildings, these would be limited only to the removal of this link in between, which is a 20th century addition, and its removal is acceptable and would not harm historic fabric. The front doors would be updated to be suited to a private residential use, and all the original barns slits would be retained. And this way be no impact to historic fabric, and the features of historic and architectural interest would be retained. In terms of the external to the buildings, this would consist of some additional fencing here to provide privacy for Unit 3, and post and rail fencing to delineate garden amenity space to the south of the access and driveway. Garage would be used for cycle storage, parking areas retained, and of particular of concern previously, which is addressed now, is clarification on this 2.8 metre acoustic screening wall, which would be a brick flint panel wall. The conservation officer has considered the use of timber and brick and flint and the heights of the fencing to be acceptable for the historic and semi-rural sense of place. And there's also, just to note, there's planting that would soften this wall. A detailed conservation assessment is provided in the report, but I will summarise this to bring attention to how the duty to have regard to the preservation of the listed buildings and their setting is being considered, particularly as a lack of regard to heritage duties was a reason for the previous approvals being quashed. So I'll just return to the street scene view for context. So the heritage significance arises principally from the retained architectural features, including the traditional materials, detailing, and the ventilation slits on all elevations of the barn, and the exposed timber roof structure, and the open threshing bay area. The original plans subdivided the barn centrally, removing the open threshing sector, and some of the slits would have been removed and replaced with modern windows. And the acoustic screen had not been clarified. And as I've already described, the amended plans have addressed these issues meaning the bay character is appreciable, the slits retained, and also the garage extension also removed from proposals. And just to note on the acoustic wall and fencing, these would be lightweight and reversible. And the Conservation Officer notes that enclosing farmyards with such a wall would not be unusual historically, so they haven't raised concern with the means of enclosure. It has been identified that less than substantial harm would be caused to the listed barn, principally through its subdivision, but this would be at the low end of the scale as the threshing bay volume would remain appreciable and modern partitions are removable or reversible. Just for clarification for members to be aware of that there's an error in paragraph 6.25 and 6.28 of the committee report. Just because the harm described is a low level of less than substantial harm. And this harm has also been weighed against heritage and public benefits in accordance with the requirements of the National Planning Policy Framework. These pertain to the farmhouse being returned to its original domestic use, the removal of the unsympathetic modern link in between the barn and the farmhouse, and in enabling the continued use of the buildings, in turn ensuring their survival, given the agricultural and commercial uses were lacking in viability. So moving on to other matters. In terms of highways, the access and parking arrangement has been considered acceptable by the local highways authority. They have no concerns that the proposal would be unsafe or harm the flow of traffic given the access is existing, and the residential use would result in fewer vehicle movements than the existing lawful office use. For reference, this is the access, which is not proposed to change, the driveway, which would serve the dwellings, and parking areas that would be retained. That's the front of the farmhouse. The standard residential amenity is also being considered acceptable. Private external amenity space would be provided for each dwelling, measuring over 100 square metres. 2 of these would be across the driveway and the green area over here. This is also deemed appropriate given they would have gated entrances and be providing a level of privacy and safety. Internal and external noise levels for occupants have also been considered through the submitted noise impact assessments, which have also been reviewed by the Council's Environmental Health Officer. The noise impact of the road and surrounding uses, taking into account existing double glazing and insulation, has been considered acceptable, subject to the erection of the acoustic wall. In terms of trees and biodiversity, as set out in the report, the impact on these is considered acceptable, subject to compliance with construction methodology, landscaping and enhancement measures, as have already been proposed on the submitted plans. Finally, is the matter of flooding and drainage. An objector has raised concern with the existing drainage arrangement on the site, highlighting that there is a pump to manage surface water that had been omitted from the plans. Omitted from the submitted flood risk assessment. No objections to the flood risk assessment and change of use were originally raised by the lead local flood authority, and the submitted flood response evacuation plan is considered satisfactory. However, it has since been confirmed that the drainage arrangement does include a sump pump to the rear of the buildings. As pointed out on this image, the pipe connects to the sump pump, which is behind the modern link, when the discharge is so the pump collects surface water from the tarmac area and it discharges this across the neighbouring access when it is full. Removal of this pump is proposed following demolition of the modern link. However, the flood risk assessment does not consider the implications of this removal and the surface water flood risk that could result. The principal drainage engineer has assessed this on site and advises that a revised flood risk assessment is required to explain the pump's purpose and demonstrate that its removal will not result in increased flood risk elsewhere. Details of measures to prevent flooding in the property from the driveway are also advised. So in accordance with the requirements of the National Planning Policy Framework and Local Plan Review Policy SP6, flood risk assessments must consider all sources of flood risk and be submitted prior to determination. And these assessments must show that flood risk will not be increased elsewhere and sustainable drainage systems to be incorporated where possible. It is acknowledged that the existing arrangement, that this is an existing arrangement and there is no increase in impermeable area proposed. Furthermore, the drainage engineer has advised that safe access and egress in terms of flood risk from the site are achievable, and they are not concerned that an appropriate drainage solution would not be achievable. So it's considered that the site is capable of having an acceptable flood risk and alternative surface water drainage measures without affecting the listed buildings. However, as mentioned, it is clear in policy that an appropriate flood risk assessment is required before planning permission is granted. So in conclusion, accepting this flooding and drainage matter, it is considered that the proposal is in accordance with current development plan policies. The listed buildings and the character and appearance of the conservation area would be preserved, and material considerations do not indicate that planning permission should otherwise be refused. Less than substantial harm to the significance of the Grade 2 listed barn is considered to be low level and outweighed by the heritage benefits of the proposal. So therefore, for 25/01670/LBC, the officer recommendation is to delegate to the development manager to grant listed building consent subject to the conditions in section 9 of the agenda report and section 3 on the update sheet. However, for the full application, due to the flood risk assessment being deemed insufficient at present, the officer recommendation is to delegate the development manager to grant planning permission subject to the satisfactory resolution of surface water drainage matters within 6 months or a longer period if agreed with relevant parties, and the conditions in section 8 of the agenda report and any other additional conditions required by the lead local flood authority. If these matters are not addressed within the agreed timescales, then the recommendation would be to delegate to refuse planning permission for the reason listed on section 5 of the update sheet. Thank you.
Thank you, Harriet. Paul Gollard. Paul, any comments on highways at this point?
Yes, please, Chairman. As my colleague Harriet mentioned, this planning application follows from an earlier planning application from 2 years ago that was quashed via the High Court. There were no highway issues with the previous planning application, and neither are there with this planning application, as I will explain. The existing access onto the B3421 is existing. The sightlines onto the B3421 are also existing. If this proposal was going to increase traffic, we would have some concern because the sightlines to the south towards the canal bridge, there is some obstruction there due to the crash barriers and the bridge structure. But the planning application before you tonight is changing the use of the building from 850 square metres of offices to 3 dwellings with 3 bedrooms. The offices would have had tens of people coming in and out on a daily basis. The 3 dwellings will at most have around 18 vehicle movements a day, 9 in, 9 out. So that is a substantial reduction in vehicle movements using the access, albeit with sightlines on to standard to the south. That significant reduction in traffic would, in my view, would significantly reduce the potential for harm and significantly reduce the potential for personal injury accidents. And therefore, on that basis, my advice to you tonight is that it'd be very difficult for us to refuse the planning application on traffic and access grounds. Your officers are also satisfied with the layout of the site. The proposal complies with your car parking standards. There is cycle storage. There is electric vehicle charging points. And finally, I'm also satisfied with the construction management plan. I consider that it is sufficient for the scale of the building works that would take place, which are by and large a conversion. I would not be expecting large numbers of lorries carrying spoil or concrete in and out of the site. So therefore, on that basis, your highway officers raise no objection to this planning application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. I now call upon Councillor Andy Moore from Newbury Town Council. You know the procedure, Andy. 5 minutes, and we will notify you after 4 minutes if you so wish.
Thank you. Unlikely. Good evening, members. Newbury Town Council considered this application and its predecessor on 3 occasions at its Planning and Highways Committee in December 2024, in August last year, and again this January. Both the main objector and the applicant have presented to us during the deliberations. It would be fair to say that we have changed our minds during the process, and I was perhaps not as clear as I now am about the legal process that intervened in the consideration. We raised no objections to the previous application, whilst recognising that it was a challenging location given the surrounding waterways. We liked the idea that the farmhouse was to be returned to its original usage as a dwelling. When the current proposal was considered last year, we were more concerned about the flood risk, perhaps lacking the views of the SUDS officer at that stage. There was also newly voiced concern about vehicles turning out of the access road, the one to the south of the farmhouse that Mr. Goddard's just been referring to, into the Hanbridge Road. In August, it seems as well we lacked the views of the highways officer at that stage. Finally, we responded to the anxiety of the main objector that future residents of the properties could adversely affect their adjacent business. The table at section 4.1 of your committee report reflects these concerns, but it doesn't actually say that we registered an objection at that time. For the avoidance of doubt, and as stated in other documents in the portal, we did. Last month, when reconsulted, we saw that our concerns on the first 2 matters, flood risk and traffic, were not shared by West Berkshire Council's professional officers on those matters. It was also clarified that future residents would be made aware of nearby activities and could not expect them to alter simply because they were now living in their vicinity. As a result, we removed our objection, returning to the decision made on the prior application of no objection. Could I just clarify one further matter in the committee report? At paragraph 314, it's stated that the site lies within the Newbury Town Centre Conservation Area. However, at 617, the conservation area is stated as Kennet and Avon East. The latter has to be the case, since the site is almost as far to the east as it's possible to go, whilst remaining within the Newbury parish. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Andy. Right, members, questions for Councillor Moore? No? You got off lately. Okay. I now call upon the objector, John Cole. Again, do you wish us to notify you after 4 minutes? Okay. Well.
Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, my name is John Cole. I run and own the clothing warehouse, which is on the same campus. We recycle clothing and employ 15 local people. We've been in business at this site for 31 years. My company also owns the site's access to the road across which Hanbridge Farmhouse has certain rights of access. Up until now, Hanbridge Farm has been used by commercial occupants and there have been no real issues. This would most likely change if converted to residential use, and so we have opposed this application. My solicitors have already written multiple letters to the council outlining the difficulties with the application and information gaps, but I wanted to use this opportunity to highlight the most critical ones. These are the flooding of the area, lack of safe access to the site, and potentially unmitigated noise and heritage impacts. Flooding. When the council visited the site last week, it was flooded internally. This is not a one-off occurrence and happens several times a year. The flooding of the building is due to it being below ground level, something that is impossible to change, of course. We have had serious flooding in 2007, 2012, 2014 and twice in 2025. Even without serious flooding, the barn will flood, and when the pump fails, the damage can be severe. Despite the gravity of this issue, the applicant's flood risk assessment completely omitted the fact that the surface water excess is currently prevented using a pump on the site, which is clearly not adequate for the task. This calls into question whether the developer's reliance on, quote, long-established traditional drainage arrangements, permeable surfacing and soakaway systems, end quote, would actually be sufficient. We believe strongly they won't be. Traffic and highways. I commissioned an independent report on highways issues. The expert at Railton TPC Limited concluded that, quote, the applicant has not demonstrated that a safe visibility display from the site access to the south can be achieved and maintained, end quote, and that the baseline information in the transport assessment is flawed. Hanbridge Road already carries heavy traffic, so the access design needs to be carefully considered, and our experts say that they have failed to do just that. This is, of course, a serious safety issue. Commercial use works well at the site because we could allow the occupants to use our northern access to exit the campus, as we have done so in the past. We would be unable to offer this option to residential occupants because they would need 24-hour access, and this would jeopardise our security as we need to lock the gates outside of normal business hours. Noise. Half the site currently operates as commercial premises. There are cars and deliveries coming and going 7 days a week. In addition to the noise from Hanbridge Road itself, all the developers' noise assessments were based on measurements where the windows were closed. Even they accepted that this is a major limitation on their report. Their suggestion is to install acoustic grade vents, but they note it might not be possible given the historic nature of the building. The same goes for their recommendations for the barn roof, an acoustically weak element. It is likely that extensive changes will be required to the internal building that would transform the features of the Grade 2 listed buildings and have a negative impact on the Kennet and Avon Canal East Conservation Area. Even the Conservation and Design Officer of the Council noticed the missing gaps in the information provided of how the impact will be mitigated. The noise issue plays two ways. One, Hanbridge Farm is unsuitable for its proposed residential use because of the noise context, and two, it could create a nuisance complainant when residential occupiers dislike the noise of our operations, which is within norm for its commercial use. Heritage. This brings me to my last point, which is the harm to the local heritage asset. As said, the committee is dealing with a listed building within a conservation area, and so they should have a higher standard in considering the application. Both national and local policies are strict, and our local plan states that, quote, development will not be permitted if it would adversely affect the character, scale, proportion, design, detailing, or materials used in the listed building, end quote. But the proposed...
It's coming up to 4 minutes.
But the proposed fenestration would do just that, and I'm not the only one who is concerned about it. The Society for the Protection of Ancient Buildings also noted in their response that the new scheme will cause a very high degree of unjustified harm. This is simply the wrong place for residential, not just in terms of flooding, surrounding noise, traffic and design, the problems it may cause to our business, and the fact that families would have to cross the road to get to their own gardens. I strongly urge the committee to refuse the application, and I think I have time to just respond to a couple of points. We used to allow the office use to use our exit, which they did all the time. So the traffic wasn't a problem, but it would increase the traffic before they used ours because we all got on nicely. And the pumps pump the water out of the building, not off a tarmac area. It's the water level in the building. So how can the council let a housing development go on when poor families in the future...
Just coming up to 5 minutes, so if you conclude, please.
Yeah, I will. Poor families in the future who unknowingly buy these houses will be lives ruined possibly by flooded homes. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Right, members, questions? They're around the table. Yes, Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening. The access that you're referring to gates that stop access to and from the site out of hours. The one to the south, obviously I see a gate there, but they have rights of access. So how is that being proposed? Because you won't be allowed to lock that gate.
No, there's two gates on the south access, one further down.
There is one near the road. And
one which is ours, yes. We wouldn't knock the one near the road. But what I was saying is, in the past, the office users used to exit, for example, through our car park and just drive out that way because it was much safer. There were several accidents. We've been there 30 odd years. So there's several accidents pulling out. There was just safer. So we used to allow them to use it. We wouldn't be able to do that residential because we need the gate shut. Do you
mind commenting? You mentioned it's safer.
Yeah.
But on the site visit, the actual visibility displays that I was able to see said that there's more visibility because it's a flatter surface coming out of the exit to the south than the one to the north. So can you help me with that? Why is it safer to come uphill and have less visibility than.
Because the visibility display is within the acceptable levels. I think it's 80 metres. I'm not the expert, but the north exit to the right, the canal, is 62 metres, which falls well short of the recommended or.
But aren't we saying here that the visibility displays in consideration for people that would be living there would be the south? Because you wouldn't be allowing them to exit on the north exit. I thought that's what you said.
Yeah, but I was responding to the point that the traffic wouldn't be increased residential use because office use used to use it all the time. They didn't. They used to exit by the safe exit. It's fine to come in by the south, exit by the north. The south is the unsafe exit to pull out of. And obviously that's the only thing the residents would be able to pull
I'll
out.
get further clarification from Mr. Goddard in a bit. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Right, okay, Councillor Foot to start with.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yes, you mentioned, I think you commissioned your own heritage consultant. Could I ask, did you consult with the Conservation Officer at West Berkshire Council?
Consult with a lot of people, to be honest. I don't think directly, no.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Hooker.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Cole. I went to the site meeting and I discussed this with Mr. Goddard when I got back, that exit, as you say, on the right-hand side as you go out, that's pretty tough to get through there. I don't think you can actually turn. It's quite tricky to turn right, I must admit. You were saying there that you've given kindly permission for the office workers to use your exit. Now you're saying that maybe,
well that's been a bit misconstrued.
My question there really is, I can understand what you're saying, but how are you going to police that?
How are we going to police what exactly?
Stopping the residents taking your exit when you're open.
It's a good question. We probably wouldn't, because at the end of the day, if it got approved, we wouldn't want to upset people once they were living there. What would be the point? That we don't. So if it gets, I'd say, fair cop, and try and get on with the neighbours, of course, if it does happen. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we exhausted the questions. Okay, you can return back to public benches.
Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry. The question.
Yeah, I did have one. It was to do with flooding, because we went into the barn. We didn't go into the cottage. The barn wasn't flooded that I remember, but was it?
Down in the boiler.
Oh, I didn't go that far into the barn. Okay, thank you. No, that was it.
Right, now I'm now going to invite the supporters. Now, Simon Pike, in his capacity as a supporter and not Thatcham Town Council. Are you on Zoom, Simon?
Yes, there's Chair.
No, okay. I've also got Sharon Bovingdon.
I am present.
Is that you, Simon?
It is. I'm remote.
Okay, right. Well, the question I've got for both of you basically is that you've got 5 minutes between you, and one of you are on Zoom and one is in person. So I don't know how you're going to arrange this.
Okay, we have coordinated. Can I start?
Okay, right. Well, do you want us to notify you after 2.5 minutes?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, right. Are you ready?
I am, yes.
Right. The clock starts now.
Thank you. So I'm sorry that I cannot attend your meeting in person this evening. Some of you will know me as a Thatcham Town Councillor and Chairman of its Planning and Highways Committee. This statement is made in a personal capacity, but I have considered the applications in the same way as I would do in that committee. Hambridge Farm is within the settlement boundary of Newbury in the new local plan, so there is a presumption in favour of development. However, the location is still remarkably rural. It is in area LV1 of the West Berkshire Landscape Character Assessment, that is Kennet Lower River Valley, with the strategic gap between Newbury and Thatcham to the east. There is a Beebot Nature Reserve north of the river and a landscape buffer to the Hambridge Road Industrial Estate. These applications restore the farmhouse to its original historic use and convert the barn into a more appropriate use for its substantially rural setting. Unfortunately, the previous conversion into offices resulted in significant harm to their historic character. These applications would reverse some of that harm by fully opening the central bay of the barn and removing the modern link. The proposed changes do not cause any significant further harm, and most of them will be needed for any other viable future use of the buildings. The council granted previous applications for similar developments, so the principle of this change of use is already established. Those applications were quashed through a consent order, but without considering the merits of the application. In the light of this, the council's planning department has approached the present applications with an abundance of caution. It has requested significant modifications to the originally submitted plans and additional documentation, and the Conservation Officer has provided a detailed explanation of its heritage assessment. The concerns of objectors and their legal representatives have been addressed in the committee report and the supporting report by council officers and independent experts. Therefore, were this committee to review these two applications and an appeal was made to the Planning Inspectorate, it is highly probable that the appeal will be granted. Any appeal would involve significant cost to the council at a time when its budget is under considerable pressure. I therefore urge this committee to approve both applications. If the committee members have any unresolved reservations, these should be minor and can be addressed through conditions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, Sharon, do you want to continue on? At the moment, the stopwatch is stopped at 2:29, so you'll need to come to the lectern.
Evening, everybody. Yes, he's actually completed the whole statement. So I won't need to, I don't need any time now. He's done it.
Has he? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Nothing further you need to add?
No, that's
Okay. Right. Well, if you just wait there, and I'm going to ask members specifically, would you like to ask the question of Simon or whether it's Sharon? Right. Members, questions? No. Sorry to get you to the lectern, but okay, you can return back to the public benches.
Simon.
Thank you very much, and I must now leave you.
Thanks, Simon. Cheers. Right, moving on. We're now moving on to Fred Quartermain, who's the applicant or agent. Okay, I'm not certain what capacity you are.
Good evening. I'm Fred Quartermain. I'm partner at Thring Solicitors, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the applicant today.
Right. Are you ready to commence? The stop clock will start as of now. Over to you.
Thank you. I want to start by thanking the officers for their hard work with this application. It's been dealt with not once, but twice. As we've heard tonight, the development has been previously approved, and it was quashed. It's important to consider the reasons why it was quashed, and those were heritage concerns. Importantly, as I think the supporter just alluded to, it wasn't to do with the merits of the heritage concerns, it was to do with the way that the heritage issues were articulated in the report. From an applicant point of view, the fact that it was dealt with by consent and the council are committed to rectifying that concern is really pleasing. It's pleasing to see a commitment to getting it right. To be clear, when it comes to heritage, the question before you is to have special regard to the preservation and the desirability of preservation of those heritage assets. Officers in the report have clearly articulated the relevant tests and have reached robust conclusions. We would urge you to adopt those conclusions in full. Looking at the application itself, as has been identified, it is a conversion, a change of use from a vacant office to a residential use. That is important because it does present that baseline for the assessment here. Officers have correctly applied this to conclude that there are benefits to the scheme, for example, in terms of highways. I'm not going to labour the point too much because the report before you and the presentation your officers have made has done it much more eloquently than I ever will, but the development is acceptable in principle. There are no concerns about the character and appearance of the proposals. Whilst there is a low level of less than substantial harm, and again, I thank officers for the clarification this evening in relation to the report, what this means is permission can be granted if the benefits outweigh that harm. Now, any change to a listed building has the potential to be harmful, The applicant has listened to concerns that were raised during the consultation process and has reacted to minimise that harm. The officer has completed a balancing exercise appropriately and identified heritage benefits which outweigh this less than substantial harm. The conclusion reached is correct and heritage doesn't justify a refusal here. The proposals deliver a good level of residential amenity in line with policy, and there is no conflict inherently between a residential use in this location and any of the neighbours. There are betterments in terms of traffic and highways impacts against the baseline office use, and the development ticks the box in terms of biodiversity as is required at the time of the application. At the site visit and after the site visit, a concern has been raised about an existing sump pump. And again, we commend officers to reacting to this quickly, and a site visit was held yesterday with drainage officers so they could understand the concerns and react to that. We commend officers for visiting quickly. To be clear, there have been no historic flooding concerns at the issues at the site from surface water flooding. Even with the adjacent car park now tarmacked, development for which we've seen not been able to identify any consent, the pump itself is not in use. Its existence wasn't included within the FRA because it is due to be removed. So the reason why the FRA doesn't refer to the pump is clear. Officers have asked for the FRA to be updated to deal with that issue, and we're happy to update it. The FRA itself is a matter of technical approval rather than a merits-based judgment. So we agree with—
on 4 minutes.
Thank you. We agree with the council's approach here that the technical detail could be dealt with by officers once you have made your merits-based assessment of the proposal. Indeed, the matter is a minor one, and an updated FRA was submitted to the council today to deal with it. I appreciate there hasn't been time to assess that document. I raise it just to indicate how small an issue this actually is in the scheme of the proposal. In summary, the proposal will bring a disused heritage asset back into long-term use and create family homes in Newbury. Simply put, this is an appropriate location for this development. There are heritage benefits and heritage benefits alone without considering other public benefits, which outweigh the less than substantial harm that have been identified. The development accords with your policies.
You draw your speech to a conclusion.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Right, members, questions? Yes, Councillor Hooker.
Thank you, Mr. Quartermain. You mentioned there that the pump is not required and it's all superfluous now for the use that we're looking at here today. But and you said also there's no historical information or data on the building flooding. When we had the site meeting, it was definitely flooded unless it was a pipe burst. Any explanation what that flooding?
So my understanding is that the boiler had problems, and I understand the flooding was localised around the boiler area. I wasn't at the site visit, I didn't see it myself, but those are my instructions.
Thank you.
Further questions at all? No? Okay. Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Right, Councillor Foote, are you speaking as ward member?
Thank you, Chair. No, I'm not intending to speak as ward member.
Is your fellow ward member?
No, we're not.
Okay.
I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee might have in that capacity. But
right, okay. Well, bearing in mind that you asking questions for the committee will be based on what you're going to say in your speech. So obviously we won't be able, or members won't be able to. Right, members, it's now your opportunity to ask the points of clarification of the highways officer and the planning officer. Right, Councillor Abbs.
Yes, I'm sure Mr. Goddard heard my question to the objector. Can you run us through, please, very carefully, ingress, egress, whatever you wish to call it. I do have a concern also about the gardens being over a road. Could you cover that off, please, as well?
Thank you, Chairman. I was wondering if you could be somewhat more specific.
Well, on the site visit, I saw that the south exit appeared to be have bigger visibility displays and an easier approach in and out. So in my head, I was assuming it was safer. Is there anything I should conclude from what's been presented to say that I've somehow got that wrong?
I think I need to begin by stating that the objector, Mr. Cole, mentioned that the potential of being able to use the northern access. That is rather difficult for us to consider because that is a private arrangement that could be ended at any time with the existing uses of the site. So therefore, I've not given that a great deal of weight. I've therefore assumed a scenario where the existing use would use the south access and south access only on that basis. And comparing the proposed use to the office use, as I mentioned earlier, the proposal will have a substantial reduction in traffic generation. Now, if we suppose that all the traffic does then go out on the northern access, I have some concerns about that access too. I'm a bit concerned about the access to the north towards the A4 because of the river bridge there. I'm also concerned that according to the crash map data, in the last 5-6 years, there have been 2 personal injury accidents at that very access that involved in slight injuries. So therefore, I'm not sure whether there is a significant advantage of all the traffic travelling around to the northern access anyway, even if that was a route that I could actually legally secure. So then there's the question about the gardens opposite the access road into the site past the proposed 3 dwellings. I do not consider the extent of traffic that goes in and out of the clothing warehouse to be necessarily prohibitive to residents being able to cross the access road to be able to enjoy the use of the gardens, in my view.
Yeah, but we do know that the clothes place does operate many days a week. I'm sure I've dropped stuff off there myself on a Sunday. I must admit it's a while since I've done that, but I'm pretty sure it's open most of the time. So it doesn't really matter that it's open 7 days a week or anything of that nature. You're just not. There's nothing I should be worrying about here. Is that correct?
My advice would be no.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So, further comments? No. Okay, Councillor Abbs, right. Okay, I'll pick you in a minute, Councillor Vickers. Right, Councillor Dick was the next one on the list, I think.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Ms Allen, for a very helpful and clear report, and indeed to the other contributors who've thrown more light. SUDs and floods. You only need to appear and glance at the site to realise that this is a big question. I'm a little bit surprised that there was a site visit as late as yesterday to look at this. Another site visit, I probably should say, but nevertheless there was. And effectively, I'd just like to hear from the officer, it's not the technical term, I'm conscious of our audience here, but you propose to sort that by a precondition, which has, I'm using non-technical language here, a plan has to be put forward which is acceptable to the Planning Department of West Berkshire Council before they can consider approving the application should we decide to approve it. Is that correct?
Yeah, so yeah, for clarification, it's we wouldn't require, it wouldn't condition the flood risk assessment. We'd want that flood risk assessment before considering, and that subject to that, then conditions and further information may be advised. Normally we can condition mitigation measures based on a flood risk assessment, but because that assessment itself has not been considered sufficient, we can't yet condition mitigation measures until that's resolved.
Thank you very much.
Okay. You didn't want to add anything further. Oh, okay. Right, Councillor Vickers.
Yes, I'd like to pursue that one. I don't know whether it's for the case officer or for Mr. Bacchus, who's sitting there and, comfort to be at our disposal, as it were. As I understand it, what the case officer said is right normally, but there have been cases, I think, where if it's only a technical matter, it's not an assessment of the risk, but it's an assessment of the technical details of the means of addressing the this. So my question to Mr. Backus would be, presumably, are you satisfied that it is just the sort of equipment and the way of operating and maintaining that equipment that is the issue here? It was interesting to hear that the pump that's there now is going to be dispensed with, and it's an entirely different method. But I'm happy with the recommendation as it is, that this doesn't get approved as a condition, but it only gets approved when Mr. Backus or one of his team sign it off as being sufficient. But am I right in assuming what your views are on this?
Yeah, so the crux of the problem has been discussed was that the pump was not mentioned anywhere in the flood risk assessments. That came out through the complainant's information that there may be a pump on site. And again, through the committee meeting last week, officers and members identified a pump and an outflow from that. So the reason I was out the other day for Ms. Dick's interest was just to get clarification as to what this pump is doing and where it's going. The applicant has insisted that the pump was there to deal with potential bowways from historic surface water flooding, which impacted the car park. There was no mention of this in the flood risk assessment. I need the flood risk assessment updated to reflect that information, so it's there in writing, and it's not just something which has been verbally communicated, because at the moment there's no mention of it. The flood risk assessment could be rendered invalid on that basis.
Thank you, Chairman.
Are you happy?
Sorry, I wasn't at the site visit. I couldn't be. I had another meeting. Was it actually repeated again? Because I could have gone yesterday. If Councillor Dick said
No. What you're hearing about is there was a visit by Paul Backus specifically to address some of the points that came out on Thursday. Okay.
I went out on my lunch break just to check it out.
Okay. Further questions of officers? Right. Sorry. Right. Okay. Councillor Hooker and then Councillor Abbs again.
Thank you. One for Mr. Goddard. Mr. Goddard, just a bit of clarification on the road access to these houses. General sort of question. One, is that in the ownership of Clothing Warehouse, or is it an unadopted road? If it's in the ownership of Clothing Warehouse, is access through a right of way? And could that situation change if it's in the ownership of Clothing Warehouse to be withdrawn at a later date?
Chairman, I can confirm that the road certainly isn't adopted. With regards to rights of access, I may have to pass the question over to my planning colleagues on that.
Thank you, Chair. That would not be a planning matter because it would be a civil matter between the applicants and the adjoining owner.
See where I'm going with this? If it was withdrawn, you wouldn't get access to your home.
Okay. Right. Point taken, Councillor Hooker. Right. I think Councillor Abbs wished to come back again.
Yes, please. I believe this is not for Mr. Goddard this time. This is for Harriet behind me. EPC ratings. Intended use of the building as residential versus commercial to meet the new legislation to do with EPC ratings will mean insulation going on the roofs. And we have a heritage asset of great value. Can I get some assurance from the officer that I'm really not going to be able to see a change in the roof, which will have to be taken off to install the insulation, as we discovered on site, then replaced, and all will look the same, and we will meet the relevant EPC rating? Assume the EPC rating is a planning matter, not some other matter.
Deborah, you can answer.
Chair, would you like me to answer? Okay. Thank you. EPC ratings for listed buildings don't have to meet EPC ratings that normal listed, but there's there's an exception for EPC ratings. Yes. In terms of the roof insulation, they haven't proposed any roof insulation as part of this application. We have put on a condition, if I draw members' attention to the update report, which, glasses on. Which
Deborah, sorry to interrupt you, but we were specifically told on site that there would be roof insulation and that was to be required. So I'm confused.
we talked about insulation, about how they would do it, and it would have to be above to keep the timbers exposed. But at the moment, they're not proposing any. But we've put it, in order, because potentially insulation could be installed, and we've put condition on saying no new installation shall be installed until details have been submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. Thereafter, the works to the ceiling shall incorporate and be undertaken in accordance with the approved details. So I think, sorry if members felt they were misled, but it was merely talking about the different types of insulation that a roof that you could put, whether it be a cold roof or a warm roof
So
insulation.
we've added a condition that if they choose to install insulation, then we control it. But if they choose not to, they don't have to.
Yeah, at the moment, the proposal before us is that insulation is not required. The documents that have been submitted have stated that they don't require upgrading the roof, that it's suitable in its current form for the new use. We've put on a condition to ensure that if insulation is installed in the roof, then we would control that matter and ensure that insulation is installed in such a manner that it wouldn't impact the significance of the listed building. And it's a standard condition.
I understand that from a new home, it sounds terrible. It's going to be cold and drafty and lofty and all sorts of stuff. But whatever, if they're saying they're not going to do it or don't have to do it, and if they do,
it's not part of the proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is that exhausted all the questions, officers? Okay, right. Now, members, I do need to read out the two applications in regarding what you're going to be voting for following the debate. And on application 25/01669/FUL, I do need to identify that this is going to be a delegation to the development manager if it's granting planning permission, subject to the satisfactory resolution of surface water drainage matters within 6 months, or such a longer period that may be authorised by the development manager in consultation with myself or the Vice Chairman of Western Area Planning Committee. And the conditions listed in section 8 of the agenda report, in brackets, or minor inconsequential amendments to those conditions authorised by the development manager in consultation with the chairman or vice chairman of this committee, that's myself or the vice chairman, and any additional conditions required by the LLFA. Or if the drainage matters are not adequately addressed, to delegate to the development manager to refuse planning permission for the reasons listed, what I'm going to list below. Refusal reason: it has not been conclusively demonstrated that a satisfactory arrangement for disposing of surface water can be achieved, and consequently a risk of flooding would remain as a result of the development proposed. Therefore, the application runs contrary to policy SP6 of the West Berkshire Core Strategy brackets 2006-2026, as well as the National Planning Policy Framework. In regard the second one that you will be voting for on 25/01670/LBC, to delegate to the development manager to grant consent subject to the conditions listed in section 8 of the committee report and the additional condition listed in the update report. Please note. Once the members are obviously got into debate and spoken on the items, we need to look at the way that the motion is going to be accepted or rejected the officer recommendation for agenda item on this particular one, 4/1. So to summarise it, prior to members voting on this particular matter, the proposal will be summarised where necessary. I will be asked to ask the proposal to be put forward and the reason for the proposal, if it is particularly important to clearly state the reasons for a decision where the committee's decision goes against officer's recommendation, as the officer's report cannot be relied upon in the same way. So I'm going to ask you, members, is there any further clarification you require before we actually enter into the debate? No? Shake of heads? Okay. Right. Okay. Members, are we ready to commence the debate? Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an unusual situation in that we're having to presented with a previously approved application. So I don't think there's a huge need for debate, but I would like to congratulate the officers on making very clear presentations to us. I'm not sure this came to the committee last time, but if it did, then I wasn't on it. So I've really got nothing much to add, except that, sorry, I didn't visit the site. I'm familiar with it, but I would have liked to have gone inside that listed building.
Okay, well, thanks for those observations, Councillor Vickers. Right, Councillor Dick, continuing the debate.
Thank you, Chairman. So my personal concerns were to do with the nature of the building, grade 2 and all that goes with it, the noise issues, the potential highways issues, and of course, water everywhere. But if it helps, I've listened very carefully to all that's been said, experience from all around, and obviously relying on the professional reports. And if you're happy for a general comment about both applications, I'd be happy to propose that we pass both of them in the terms that you read them out. In other words, as updated.
Okay, bearing in mind, I did make the comment that it's two separate and will be taken.
I said, if you're happy, that's a general comment to cover both.
Okay, right. So shall we keep to the first application, 2501 66669/FUL? If that's the one I'm going to come back to you regarding the proposal on that particular one. Okay, right. Further comments, Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, nothing much, and we're in a situation where I don't think the normal hooks for objecting exist. So in reality, we have nothing to hang a rejection on. So if that's the case, then we have no choice but to go through with approval. So I'm happy to second Paul's proposal, assuming that's
okay. Further comments, right?
Sorry, Councillor Abbs, can I just check, is that both his proposals? Because he's proposed for both.
Yeah, they can't find a reason to object on either of them. But,
I mean, I think you said both, and now Councillor Abbs has said both, but technically the votes will be separate. Okay, yeah, okay, right. Councillor Hooker.
Thank you. Yeah, I think with the policies that we've got and what has been submitted, the issues of the external viewing is nothing I don't feel to be concerned about. I take Mr. Goddard's point with regard to highways. That is tricky. Whether or not he took into account the fact that when the officers were there, they took the other exit, and therefore whether there's more or less movement with residential being there or not, I don't know. But my other concern is, as long as we take in the condition, I think that Councillor Vickers mentioned this business of getting the agreement on the SUDs. Now, whether or not that can be done following the approval, work can't take place until that is in place. What I think you were concerned about is that this work starts and we don't actually get a conclusion on the flood risk and how we're going to deal with it.
Okay, do you want me?
Yeah, and I just clarify, the recommendation, councillor Hooker, is to delegate to the development manager to grant planning permission subject to the satisfactory resolution of surface water. So no consent will be issued until we've resolved the surface water drainage issue.
Okay, any further comments? Okay, let's take the first application. We've got a proposal and a seconder. Councillor Dick proposed, Councillor Abs seconded. Can I have all those? Is there any conditions we need to?
There is conditions on there on section 8, but I just wanted to be absolutely clear. This is for the planning permission, not the listed building permission.
Okay. Is there anything further to add before I take the vote at all? What do you want to include at this particular point?
Sorry, councillor Hooker. No, it's the conditions as set out in the committee report in section 8, and there are no additional conditions in the update report. But it will be subject to any additional conditions that Paul Bacchus, that our local lead flood authority recommend as part of the sorting out the surface water drainage issues.
Proposer, seconder, happy with those comments from the officer? Shaking, okay, all right, okay. If that's the case, then I'm going to ask to take a show of hands. Proposal in favour of that particular application? All those in favour? Okay, and that is carried. We need to just notify, I'm going to abstain, by the way, in relationship to numbers for anybody listening in the public, Sharon. We have been reminded that we ought to mention the numbers. So it's eight in favour of that particular application. Okay. And then moving on to the second application. Again, you proposed.
Again, so this is for listed building consent.
Chairman, I refer you to my earlier remarks.
Okay. Anything to add at all?
No, I think the proposal was for the conditions listed in the committee report, as well as the additional condition in the update report.
All right, all those in favour? Again, 8 in favour and 1 abstention from the chair. Thank you very much for your attendance on that application. You're welcome to stay if you so wish, but if you feel it's appropriate, you're more than welcome to leave at this point before we start the next application. Do you want a right, okay, 2-minute recession then?
Having spoken to Councillor Colson here, I actually was lobbied on this next one via an email.
Okay, well, we'll make sure that that's.
We're live streamed.
We are, okay. Okay, right. Is that been recorded? Okay, thank you, Councillor Gaines. Right, well, good evening to everyone that unfortunately weren't able to actually be in the council chamber for the first application, but from what I've heard, you were able to identify the process and procedure, so you've probably got an idea on how we're going to continue on for the second application. So I'm now moving on to item 4 in brackets 2 of the agenda. And without further ado, I'm going to ask the case officer, Sian Cutts, to introduce her presentation. So over to you, Sian.
Thank you, Chairman. Just bear with me as I share the screen. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. This application is seeking planning permission for the change of use of Pound Court from a commercial use that is within Class E to a place of worship which is within Class F, learning and non-residential institutions. The application is being brought to the committee as there have been more than 10 objections to the application, and there is a recommendation to grant planning permission. Here we have the site location plan, and hopefully members, you'll be able to see the site outlined in red. This shows the existing building, car park and access off Pound Street. The site is situated to the rear of business and flats on Bartholomew Street. To the north of the site is Bridge Court, which is a block of flats. To the south of the site is Sterling House, which is in mixed business and residential use. To the south of Pound Street are houses, and so in residential use. The site is within the defined town centre commercial area and is also within the conservation area and adjacent to listed buildings along Bartholomew Street and Pound Court, and 2 Pound Street is also a listed building. Access to the site is from Pound Court, and this is 20 metres west of the Pound Street, Bartholomew Street traffic signal junction. I think you can see the site slightly better here, which shows car parking for 2 spaces and 4 cycle racks, and the remainder of the space is to be used as a drop-off and pick-up area for attendees at meetings. The floor plans and elevations submitted with the application indicate that there are no internal or external alterations to the building. The update sheet clarifies a question from the site meeting about the existing foul sewage connection. The existing connection will be used and there are no changes proposed to that. The update sheet also sets out the anticipated level of use of the building, which was set out within the planning statement. This shows the highest range of people attending would be 50 to 60 people at each of the Friday prayer sessions. Here we have some photographs of the site. This shows the front elevation and current parking usage. This area here against to the north shows the 2 parking spaces, and the area where the skip is photographed would be the cycle storage racks. These are the rear of the properties on Bartholomew Street. And this is looking out of the site towards Pound Street, and you can just see the 2 floors of residential properties. The ground floor there is in commercial use. And this is kind of the entrance to the site looking towards 2 Pound Court. Pound Street, sorry, 2 Pound Street. Members, to be clear, this application is for the change of use of the building from an office, which is within Class E of the use classes order, which is commercial, business and services uses, to one which is within Class F, which are learning and non-residential institutions. These 2 slides set out the uses which can be permitted within each use class, as planning permission is not required for changes within a use class. The update sheet does include a note about the existing premises used by the Bangladesh Welfare Centre. However, this, for members to note, this is outside the application site, and so is not part of the application that you're considering this evening. The planning history for the sites. The planning history for the site is set out within the report. Of note is that planning permission was granted in 1982 for the conversion of the building to office use. In 2017, planning permission was refused for the then change of use from Class B1 to a mixed D1, D2 non-residential institution, stroke assembly and leisure use. This was refused due to noise and highway considerations. The use class order was updated in 2021, and so the site is now a Class E use. In 2023, planning permission was granted for the change of use to a soup kitchen, and this permission remains extant and capable of being implemented. The report before you also sets out in detail legal and procedural matters which are a part of the consideration of this application. The consultation responses are summarised within the report and are available on the website to read in full. The Town Council are in support of the application. Highways originally raised concerns, and following negotiations and submission of further information are satisfied by the proposals subject to conditions, and this will be addressed in more detail by Mr Goddard. The drainage officers were also satisfied once a flood risk assessment was submitted that the details are satisfactory, and no objections were received from environmental health, subject to the good practice measures in the noise report being implemented. Conservation, Archaeology, Network Rail and the Newbury Society confirmed that they have no objections. Representations have been received from 89 contributors, 64 of whom support the application and 24 object. The full responses are available on the website and have been summarised within the report. The main points in support of the application are: there is an existing mosque 100 metres away, which has been there for 25 years, and this has been used without a problem. There is a need for a bigger facility, as there are limited facilities for members of the Muslim community. Existing facilities are not fit for purpose. It is a relocation to a more suitable site, makes efficient use of an existing building. It is sensitive to the historic environment. There will not be a problem for highway safety and is close to car parks. There are no conservation or environmental health objections. The use is appropriate, a community benefit which delivers genuine social and cultural benefits to Newbury, a focal point for educational, cultural and social cohesion, social engagement, interfaith and charitable work. There'll be a benefit to local businesses. Daily use of the building prevents crime. There are no material considerations which weigh against the application. It's supported by planning policies DM5, DM42, DM44 and paragraph 9 of the NPPF. Previous reasons for refusal have been overcome in the noise and traffic assessment. The main objections which have been raised are the proximity to the road junction and highway safety, potential impacts on parking and how this affects pedestrians and cyclists, the potential increase in traffic, particularly with the Jewson site being developed for residential use further up the road, queries about the parking requirements, lack of on-street parking, potential noise impacts, issues relating to the parking and uses of the existing Bangladesh Welfare Centre, impact on the existing parking situation for businesses in Pound Street, potential noise impacts, loss of office space for employment and commercial uses, the precedent for other non-commercial or religious uses in the business area, the building might not be fit for purpose, confusion and inaccuracies in the planning application documents. The objections have raised disagreements with consultations and with data within the submitted transport statement. A number of disagreements with the observation of West Berkshire highways and the transport assessment, and that there should be conditions to record traffic movement violations in and around the site. So that concludes the summary of the objections and supporting comments. The relevant development plan policies and supplementary planning guidance are all set out within the report before you. So in turning to the assessment of the application, in considering the principle, the application site is in commercial use within the town centre commercial area, and policy SP17 and SP18 support the retention of such uses in commercial areas. However, the application is proposing a community use as a place of worship within Class F1, and policy DM39 sets out criteria for new or expanded provision of local community facilities. This requires that the local need is demonstrated, it is accessible and inclusive to the community that it is intended to serve, that it is of quality design and has been subject to meaningful local community engagement, and consideration has been given to the use of shared space. So the application is proposing the change of use of the office building in Class E to a place of worship, Class F1. This will result in the loss of office space, and justification for this loss is required within policy SP17. The planning statement submitted with the application does not include marketing information for the site as required by policy, but does refer to the extant planning permission for the site, which granted planning permission for the change of use from office space to mixed use for storage, preparation of cooking of food for the homeless and vulnerable community, ancillary offices and outreach use. This planning permission is capable of being implemented and so represents a fallback position where the loss of the community space has been accepted. And so this is a material consideration for members. The proposal is also to provide additional community facilities, and this need has been demonstrated as the existing site in Pound Street for the Bangladesh Welfare Centre is not large enough to meet its current needs. And whilst there will be this loss of office space, it is proposed to use the site as a place of worship, which meets the needs of a particular part of the community and will contribute towards the general vitality of the town centre by providing for the needs of the community. And this particular use of place of worship is not a use which is incompatible with town centre uses, as it brings people into the town centre and meets community needs. And so the proposal is considered to be acceptable in principle. So moving on to considering the character and appearance of the area and heritage impacts. As I mentioned before, the site is within the conservation area and adjacent to listed buildings. There are no external alterations proposed to the building, and it is considered that as such, it will conserve the character and appearance of the conservation area and will have a neutral impact on the listed buildings. The proposed use as a place of worship is appropriate within the town centre commercial area. And of note is the fact that this part of the commercial area around Bartholomew Street is characterised by small businesses which also cater towards local neighbourhood needs, such as convenience shops, restaurants and takeaways, and also close to dwellings, as we have them above the commercial units surrounding the site and also on the main road frontage of Pound Street. The proposed use of the building as a place of worship will be appropriate to this character of the area within the town centre, close to residential properties and the community that it serves. The proposal is considered to conserve the character and appearance of the area and the way in which it functions. Moving on to noise impacts. The noise impacts of a proposed development are considerations which are referred to in policies DM5 and DM30. A previous application for a similar development was refused in 2017, partly due to the potential noise impacts which had not been addressed within that application. However, this application has been submitted with a noise impact assessment. Environmental Health have reviewed the details and recommended that with conditions to secure the proposed noise mitigation in the report, such as no external noise amplification, they have no objections. And so this previous reason for refusal has now been overcome. Moving on to considerations of highway safety, my colleague Mr Goddard will advise members on matters of highway safety and parking, but members will be aware that the original recommendation that he made is that subject to the submission of additional information, the details are considered to be acceptable. So in conclusion, the application is proposing the change of use of an existing office building within Class E use to a place of worship Class F1. The proposal will result in the loss of commercial floor space within the Newbury Town Centre commercial area. And whilst the proposal, this will be the loss of a modest amount of office space, there is an extant planning permission for this change of use, which will result in the loss of office space. And so this has been accepted in principle under the previous application. This therefore limits the weight that can be given to that loss of office space in this application, given it's been accepted in a previous application. The proposal will provide improved community facilities as supported by policy DM39. And so this is given weight in favour of the application. And the proposal has a neutral impact on the character and appearance of the area and the setting of the adjacent listed buildings and the conservation area. The previous reasons for refusal of the similar application with regards to noise and the impact of the proposal on surrounding properties has been overcome through the measures proposed within the noise impact assessment. And so it's considered to accord with the relevant development plan policies. And the previous reason for refusal due to the impact on the highway network has also been overcome through the submission of a revised parking layout and parking and allocation management plan, and with the imposition of conditions as set out in the report is considered to be acceptable. And therefore, we recommend the application is approved in accordance with the details set out in the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Sian. Right, I'm sure there's plenty of highways issues you want to point out to the committee. Paul, so over to you.
Just a few, Chairman. Thank you very much. I assessed the original planning application in 2017 and that the planning application that was refused. And as with that planning application, I visited the location during Friday lunchtime prayers, not only to elaborate the concerns raised by objectors, but to also give a fair assessment of the planning application that was before us. The Friday afternoon prayers are the busiest time of the week for worshippers at the mosque, and that was shown in the table that Sian produced earlier on this evening. So I visited the site on the 10th of October and next slide, started to observe what was happening with the worshippers coming to and from the mosque. And I will run through the slides briefly with you. So from 12:35 when I arrived to 13:10, there was a steady number of people arriving. There were about 5 to 10 cars parked on the Pound Street that I could identify with the mosque. There was quite a number of pedestrians, including pedestrians in groups, that walked mostly from the town centre. So I think it's clear that a lot of worshippers already do park in the town centre car parks. But there were some that came from the westerly direction, further along Embourne Road, for instance. By 1:10, all the on-street car parking spaces were taken along Pound Street. There were no gaps left. And I estimated that there were about 10 to 15 cars parked on street associated with the mosque. I did start to see some drop-off. There was a taxi that dropped someone off on the carriageway because there was nowhere to park there. Next one there, Sean. So a little while later at 13:15, there were 3 or 4 cars driving around looking for car parking. These were worshippers that were perhaps a bit later and were looking around for nowhere to park because all the spaces were taken. And they were mainly parking to the west because now I was also getting pedestrians coming from the westerly direction, the other way from the town centre. There have been concerns about the Co-op store car park being used. The Co-op store do have signs that aim to discourage such parking, but there were about 4 cars in there from my observations, by my reckoning, about 1:25. By 1:30, the first prayer session was coming to a conclusion, and worshippers started to leave the mosque. There was 1 car on carriageway to collect, again, because there was nowhere to park. And then shortly after that, till 1:50, the tens of worshippers were seen leaving the mosque. Around 50 were observed, which again is in line with the table that Sean showed earlier on. There were some individuals and some in groups that then walked to the direction where they had come from, again, mostly towards the town centre. Next slide. So I've repeated that by the looks of it. So they were, at this time, it was rather busy. Everyone was leaving the mosque, and there were about 3 taxis collecting worshippers within the carriageway. And yes, there were about 4 instances of vehicles doing 3-point turns in the middle of Pound Street, which wasn't ideal. Next slide. So a lot of the cars leaving. There was a short queue around 13:47 at the nearby Bartholomew Street, Pound Street junction, which I will talk more about later on. A queue of about 7 cars, but it didn't last long. It did clear when the next green cycle appeared. And then by 13:50, most worshippers had left the mosque, but there were a steady stream of more worshippers coming to the mosque, who then took up any vacated on-street car parking spaces. So the observations were quite similar to what I observed 9 years ago in 2017. And I felt that gave me some additional confidence in what I was assessing. I also think that the point needs to be made, and you may hear this from some objectors this evening. Objectors have submitted quite a considerable volume of information in some cases that show what goes on with all the parking infringements and turning and congestion that goes on with the mosque. But the point to be made is if we refuse this planning application, all of that wouldn't go away. It would continue, just like it did when we refused the planning application in 2017. The use is already in this street and has been for, as I think we've heard, 25 years. The proposal is to move the mosque 90 metres down the road towards the town centre. Now, as far as on-street car parking is concerned, that probably wouldn't change much with the proposal compared to the existing site. There may be more of a tilt towards the town centre because the location is closer to the town centre, perhaps more use of public car parks. But there was a concern with the 2017 application that if we provided this mosque close to the traffic signal junction, there would be concern about dropping off and collecting in such close proximity to the traffic signal junction. But because we had a bit more information from observing again 9 years after 2017, we thought, is there a way forward with this? And then what happens? In 2020, Class E was introduced, which does have quite a significant impact on consideration of the planning application. Now, Sian has mentioned Class E already, and I'll mention it again a little bit later. The on-street car parking, as I said, probably won't change all that much. Maybe more use of the public car parks in the town centre. What if we sought to do something about the collection and the pickup parking? That is a concern from a number of objectors. What if we got them, or at least attempted to get them off the street using the car park that is part of the proposal? We didn't consider it in 2017, but what if we used that car park instead of a free-for-all? What if it was used just for dropping off and collecting of worshippers? And so I've worked on a parking and allocation management plan with the applicant's agents. So there will be parking spaces allocated within the site. 2 will be allocated exclusively for the staff, including, for instance, the Iman. And all the other parking spaces would be used for drop-off, which from the relatively small numbers of people that I saw dropping off and collecting, and perhaps parking in awkward places, the car park should be of sufficient size for that, in my view, from the observations that I made. Next slide. So the other points in the parking management plan, it was quite a detailed plan. The parking will be clearly signed between staff and drop-off. The parking will be enforced and managed by on-site stewards. There would be CCTV, and number plates would be logged by staff to see who's using it. And then if people were using the car park who shouldn't be, there would be verbal reprimands to offenders. And there would be a regular review of parking behaviour and corrective actions if required. Next slide. The worshippers would be directed to use the local public car parks, those that are staying to worship, not the collection and pick up. There would be clear parking instructions to all worshippers provided through the website, notice boards and sermons, and welcome leaflets to new worshippers. During Ramadan, which incidentally started yesterday, large gatherings are not normally held at the mosque, and this would continue with the new site. And Eid prayers at the end of mosque, which is quite a substantial gathering, I understand, are not normally held at the mosque. Next slide. So the car parking layer itself, and some members have picked up on this, it does need further work, in my view. I think the car parking spaces need to be clearly marked out and painted on there from what they are now. They need to be widened in places to make them easier to use because people are coming in and out. They're not going to stay there. And there's a condition in your in the pack that enables a parking layout plan to be submitted. Next slide. And this is my final slide. Previously in 2017, it would have been the change of use from a B1 office to a place of worship. But since 2020, we've had Class E. And I do note that there is much concern about the use of an access so close to a traffic signal junction. A concern that I share. But unfortunately, because the existing use of the site being an office, it's now Class E, and we could already, without planning consent, have all those uses already in there without planning permission. Retail, food convenience, for instance, restaurants, cafes, offices, which is what it is now, health, medical uses, creches, nurseries. They're quite intensive, just like this proposal, and indoor sports recreation. And because we can already have a Class E use in the building, in my view, it makes it very difficult for us to object to this proposal and the level of traffic generation that this would produce with the access in this location when you can already have uses that would produce a similar level of traffic. So on that basis, after much deliberation and observations on site and working with the applicant's consultants, we came to the conclusion that on balance, the local highway authority would not raise objection to this planning application, subject to further plans being submitted to make the car parking a little more easier to use on the site for those dropping off and collecting. So no objection is now raised, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive report, Paul. I now call upon Councillor Andy Moore on behalf of Newbury Town Council. I don't think I need to remind you about the process, but we will let you know after 4 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I think possibly even shorter than my previous one. Newbury Town Council considered this application, its Planning and Highways Committee, in August last year. We support this application. This is a judgment that we make on fewer than 10% of the applications that we review, and we look at every application in the Newbury Town area. That sets it apart from no objection that we give to the majority of proposals. We supported it because we observed a faith community that has managed as best it can in its current rented premises, just 100 metres away from Pound Court, had ownership of the property proposed and considered it more suitable for its needs. This is a modest application, making no external alterations to the modest building and yard, beyond the introduction of cycle parking and a reallocation of parking spaces to drop off pick-up spots, as you've heard. We supported the application because we considered that access arrangements would be improved from the current situation. I would like to commend the applicant, his agent, and particularly Mr. Goddard, for the positive engagement they've undertaken in producing the proposed arrangements. I note that setting down and picking up will now take place off the public street, and that anyway, this has been managed reasonably satisfactorily over the many years of the current use of the current premises. I further note that there are no parking standards applicable to places of worship, And I invite members to consider how other such places in and around our town would manage where standards to be applied. There's really nothing further to say. Newbury Town Council supports this application, and I urge you to do likewise.
Thank you, Andy. Right, questions to Newbury Town Council representative? No? Okay. Again, you got off lately. Right, we've now got an objector, Claire Struthers Semple. I thought she was in the audience, but I've also been told possibly on Zoom. Are you on Zoom, Claire?
Can you hear me now?
Ah, yes, we can hear you. You can hear us?
I can, yep.
Okay. Are you able to come on the visual?
No.
Can we personally see you?
No.
No. Oh, well done. Yep.
Okay.
Hey, right. I know. I'm not certain whether you listened to the earlier part of my presentation, introduction to the proceedings, but we did take note of your request, but unfortunately, we felt it's appropriate to keep to the standard procedure. So you've got 5 minutes, and we will notify you after 4 minutes if that's okay for you. Okay. So
yes, thank you.
Stopwatch will start as soon as you start speaking.
Okay, thank you. At the site visit, the applicant stated there were no plans to close the operations at the current site, mosque site. This is contrary to every document in the application. And no planning measures that can prevent the current mosque continuing to be used or control the catchment area or visitor numbers for either or both sites are available. And if this application was to be approved, there would be 2 mosques within 100 metres of each other with a total capacity in excess of 700 approximately. This is a material consideration for the current application. This scenario would lead to unacceptable impact on highway safety, taking into account all reasonable future scenarios, such as predicted traffic volume increases, Jewson development, 79 houses within 100 metres of the proposed site, plus associated construction traffic, Sandalford development, which highways considered an added concern, leading to much additional traffic and becoming even busier in future years. And furthermore, there will be demographic changes which everyone can access from public sources. Public asserts the following policies are not adhered to: SP1 and 18, DM5, 9, 30, 39, CS 13 and 14 from the core strategy, OVS 5, 6 from the local plan, and NPPF advice for reasons of scale, proportionality, highway safety and capacity, local amenity of residents, and restriction of local businesses. The highway's reasons for refusal were around limited parking. There were 9 unrestricted, as we've heard, we've changed to 2 spaces now, with the rest for set down. No data are provided on the proportion of vehicle movements attributable to drop-offs, so no quantification is possible of the impact of this provision on the current highway congestion and safety. Data collected by the public suggests it's a small proportion of the problem. Drop-offs are usually made by attendees, in which case the vehicles then still have to be accommodated on the public highway. Knowing the site entrances is not wide enough for 2 vehicles, drop-offs will cause dangerous traffic congestion and questionable turning circles. The keep clear box out in front of the site is ignored every other traffic light change, so that's 3 minutes, meaning free access in and out is not guaranteed. The second highway's reason for refusal was close proximity to a busy traffic signalised junction. This has not changed. Neither the site nor the junction has moved. The pre-application advice invited the applicant to outline specifically expected visitor numbers at any one time, inviting them to consider forward-looking changes and present a worst-case scenario. The applicant supplied estimates of 100 to 120 attendees at Friday prayers. Prayers were used to reach all conclusions fed into all models in the Evoke transport report. No primary data were collected by Evoke or Highways. The public data suggests 2 to 3 times the number of attendees actually attend Friday prayers. So not 100 to 120, but 258 to 273 on the 2 occasions they were generated primary data. There's been no consideration of reasonable future scenarios. The actual current scenario is not accurately described, and therefore there's no worst case scenario as presented in the application. The pre-application advice also asked the applicant to advise how the number of visitors could be managed. Nothing was presented. Highways note that the catchment area and the number of attendees cannot be managed via planning measures. So there is no way of managing numbers effectively. The applicant was asked whether the safe and suitable access could be achieved. There was no consideration of future reasonable scenarios that might affect the intensification of this, and no consideration of the effectiveness of the keep free box. There was no demonstration that all vehicles entering or exiting and could exit and exit in forward gear, and there was no provision of tracking plots. There was no consultation with locals despite 270 objections the last time, and this is in contravention of the pre-application advice as well. The delegated report 6.5 says that a need has been demonstrated the existing site is not big enough. According to the application, 50 to 60 attend Friday prayers times 2, 100 to 120, and according to the applicant's website, they have a capacity of 300. I make that 40%. These figures used in the evoke are all used in the evoke's conclusions. Data in the application do not support the statement in delegated report. The delegated report also says the Highways Authority initially advised the previous reason for refusal had not been overcome, and we've just had examples of how they feel that that reason has been overcome. However, notwithstanding the demonstrable flaws in the surveys, this statement does not address the fact there's a second reason for refusal, which is the proximity of the junction to the lights. The Evoke Transport statement fails to correctly assess the highway safety. It gathers zero primary quantitative data, relies on attendee numbers provided by the applicant, which demonstrated to be 2 to 3 times underestimates. It selectively uses model data when it suits the case, ignoring it when to use it would result in higher numbers. It introduces bias, draws flawed and one-sided conclusions when the opposite can also be concluded from the same data set. It infers statistical analyses are conducted when not done and actually not appropriate for the data set. It's insufficiently rigorous with numerous unsupported statements. All of the above notwithstanding, and knowing the real situation will be worse than predicted by the Evoke report, it still concluded 32.4% of journeys will be undertaken to and from the mosque by cars. With a capacity of over 700, this means more than 227 cars delivering attendees each Friday prayer.
Sorry. Okay, she's unmuted. I don't know, you carried on speaking and I was trying to get you to conclude actually, so sorry, but okay.
Sorry, that was a technicality. How long have I been on mute then?
No, and anyway, don't worry. I knew you carried on speaking. We're now into questions, so just wait. And
Sorry, can I just ask how long I was on mute for? I have not for my full 5 minutes.
You're on mute after well over the 5 minutes. It was well over.
You muted me. Sorry. Okay. Sorry.
No, you had more than your time. Right, members, questions. Right, Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening. You mentioned a couple of things there. I'm not sure I got it all because you were going at a fair old pace, but thank you very much for sharing so much. You mentioned public measurement of traffic. Could you expand on that for me, please? We've heard Mr. Goddard say that he went at least once. So when did you go and what were your, or not you specifically, when was the public data collected and how? And you mentioned something called forward gear, which I think you were referring to the entry and exit and turning circles and things. Could you expand on that for me, please, so that I'm clear on your points?
Okay, sorry. Can I just take the last one first because it's the simplest? In the pre-application advice, the applicant was asked to demonstrate that all vehicles could enter and exit in forward gear, and they were also asked for the provision of tracking plots within the parking area, and none of those, to my knowledge, have been confirmed or investigated.
Is that the assumption, therefore, that some kind of turning circle without stopping was to be created? Is that where you're going with that, or?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what was expected, but the pre-application advice asked the applicant to demonstrate that all vehicles could enter and exit in forward gear, and they asked the applicant to provide tracking plots, I presume, of how drop off or how
We'll get to explain what I assume he was responsible for the pre-app advice. We'll get him to explain what that meant.
Thank you. And the second, well, your first question, but I'm answering it second. in the response to the in the first public response to the Evoke transport statement, a methodology statement was attached as an appendix to that, explaining exactly how many instances of observation were done, because this is a very complex part of the highway. And in order to collect data, the public felt that we had to understand the traffic movements first. So on 3 occasions, traffic movements were observed. And this allowed us to identify how many people it would take to accurately count vehicles, count dangerous manoeuvres, count vehicle movements, count attendees, count parking violations. And then we would, you know, as any scientific experiment would be required to, we planned 2 sessions to duplicate our answers. And using that methodology of pre-observation and then 2 actual data collection periods, we observed 250, they were the 5th and the 13th of September. We observed 258 and 273 attendees on those occasions.
Thank you.
And so you want to
yeah, I'm just going, and that was all submitted by yourselves, and it's all in the public record, all these observations and so on. So Mr. Garda would have seen that at some point in the past. Okay, thank you.
Yes, it's on the submission on the portal on the 23rd of September, the public's response to the Evoke report.
Okay, thank you. I do have some other things, but
can I just go around the table?
Yeah, I'll come back because I wasn't entirely sure.
Okay, right. Okay, right. Councillor Vickers. Anybody else looking around the table?
Yeah. Thank you, Claire. A similar question, really, about the numbers you rattle through. You mentioned a number of 700 potential members of the community attending 2 separate mosques in the street. Now, setting aside it was 2 mosques, if I divide that by 2, or even if I don't, a mosque doesn't generate attendees. It's the size of the community that generates the mosque. So where did you get this figure of 700 from?
Okay, I can explain that. So on the applicant's website, the capacity of their current location at 33 Pound Street is listed as 300. On the assumption they need to move premises to increase capacity, I assumed that the Pound Court facility would be able to accommodate more. So I've guessed a number of 400. It could be 500. I don't know. It's just an estimate based on floor space. So the 2 combined, since it cannot be controlled, that the current mosque will stop its usage, the 2 can coexist, right, under current use. And that therefore would lead to a combined capacity of in excess of 700, approximately.
Can I ask a supplementary?
Yep, certainly.
Now, I know you've been closely observing the existing mosque, but in your observations, can you give us an estimate of how many of these 700 or of any number indeed might be actually arriving without the use of a vehicle?
No, I haven't done my proportions. All I can say is that on the 2 instances we examined, there were 258 and 273. And on the second of those days, there were 200 vehicle movements. Even despite my the public's pre-observation, calculating traffic movements is actually extremely difficult. It's a very complex situation, and that sometimes there are up to 14 vehicle movements required to find a parking space for 1 vehicle. So that's what our data showed. And sorry, your second question was?
No, that was it really.
That was it.
Well, no, sorry, it was a very associated one, which is that how many of the people you observed coming and going from the mosque were actually not using a car at all? I mean, how do you know what proportion of attendees? I can ask the applicants later. Hopefully,
I didn't collect that information. All I collected.
Body is arriving by car. That Am I right? You're assuming everybody arrives by car?
No. We counted the number of people just going in and out of the mosque. That was just
Okay, so
in
you
the
don't
door
know
and
the
out.
split between a method of transport getting there. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
No,
Right.
but the Evolve transport report concludes 32.4% of a mosque in a similar situation will arrive by car.
Okay, thank you. Right, Councillor Abbs, you had a few other points quickly.
Yeah, it was to do with the back to the forward gear thing, which I think you were starting to refer to the width of the entrance to the area that's being set aside for pickup and drop off. Can you expand on that in terms of why you think that's not going to work? Do you have any? So again,
Well, I mean, as was displayed or demonstrated and pointed out to everybody present at the meeting, at the site meeting, there is not sufficient room for in and out simultaneous crossing into the site or access to the site. And with the size of current vehicles, the expected sort of turning circle of most kind of up-to-date vehicles is of the order of 11 to 12 meters. But you know, that data were not in the submission, but it was just that the applicant was asked to determine and demonstrate that vehicles could enter and exit using forward gear only, so nobody's reversing out onto the highway, and to demonstrate the appropriate turning routes that would be adopted in the car park, and neither of those is presented. And I think, as was discussed at the site visit, you know, there's a real concern as to whether the width of the site is adequate to cope with modern day vehicles, and also the fact that, you know, as witnessed on the 7th of November, the minibuses are now being used to deliver, to bring worshippers to the mosque.
Thank you very much for that explanation.
Okay, you're all right. Okay, right. Further questions to Claire at all? No. Okay, I think we've exhausted the questions. Okay, you obviously remain listening into the debate in a few moments. Right, I'm now going to call upon Mohammed Hussain. Okay, you're going to speak as a supporter. Okay.
Obviously, after I think our architect will talk as well. So I'm not sure, is he going to get 5 minutes after me?
No, I'm sorry. It's just you can split. Sorry,
he's separate. He's an agent.
The applicant will speak. Yes, sorry, I thought you said. I thought you were meaning somebody else speaking alongside supporting. Okay, right. It's over to you, starting now.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. All right, Chair, member of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I address you in support of this application, the proposed change of use pound code to a place of worship. Under Section 38(6) of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004, members must determine this application in accordance with the development plan unless material consideration indicate otherwise. The officer's report concludes clearly that the proposal complies with the development plan when read as a whole, and recommends approval subject to condition. All the technical matters, including parking, highway safety, noise, flood risk, heritage, residential amenity, have been fully assessed. There are no objections from statutory consultees, including highway and environmental health. The previous refusal from 2017 has been expressly addressed through updated evidence and enforceable parking allocation and management poll, which Paul Goddard just explained a few minutes ago. I would also like to briefly address the context of the objection in the past as well, which happened in 2017. On 15th of June 2017, the local media, Newbury Weekly News, published that the leaflet were delivered to the Newbury household, urging residents to object to plan for a mosque. The Newbury Weekly News described this as a hurtful and divisive. Later the same year, 2017 again in 22nd of November, it was published again in Newbury Weekly News that there were dozens of objection letters were so offensive they could not publish. A situation described by a town councillor late at that time as a sad representation of Newbury. I raise this history not to attribute motive to any objector today, but to provide relevant context. It demonstrates that the opposition to mosque-related proposal has previously extended beyond the planning consideration into hostility towards the religious use itself. The context is important when assessing the weight to be given to objections that are not supported by technical evidence. The members are also subject to the public sector equality duty under Section 149 of the Equality Act 2010, which requires due regard to advancing equality of opportunity and fostering good relation. The officer report confirmed that this duty has been properly considered. To refuse this application in the absence of demonstrable planning harm would conflict the development plan and expose the council into a significant uphill risk. For this reason, I respectfully ask the members to grant this planning application. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Well under 4 minutes. Okay, questions to Mohammed? Yes, right. Hello. It's nice to hear from you. Question, Councillor Williston.
Thank you,
Right.
Chairman. I'm slightly confused as to whether you're proposing to close the existing mosque or whether the two are going to operate combined, being, I think, about 100 metres apart.
Right. Okay. So I think I believe our architect has replied email to last week, but I'll obviously clarify that. So existing mosque is a lease building, which we've been operating mosque from last 25 years, more than 25 years, and we are moving there. Once we get the permission for the new mosque, we will be moving there. We will not be running two mosques. We can't afford two mosques to run, and it's leased. We did not buy this building. The current building, the application we are presented to in front of you now today, that is our building. And currently, obviously, the office actually there, so someone is rented out. Once we get the planning permission, obviously, we will try to move, as quickly as possible. But we are not, under no circumstance, we will be running two mosques. This is actually just I would say this is a lack of understanding about application, the objectors, what they raised.
So just to be absolutely clear, you'll be closing the other mosques?
So yes, once the lease finished, will be, but we are not running two mosques at all. So the second floor of the current mosque is a flat, it's not a mosque. And also the objector, I think you guys just were talking about the 300, 400 in the numbers on the current mosque on the website. So 300 is the numbers that a building can maybe, people can go into the building. But when you pray, 300 people can't pray at the same time. Because praying, you need a lot of space and distance. Mm-hmm. Maybe 50, 60 people can stand and pray. That's why Friday, because of people, so we have a two prayer. One is around 1 o'clock and one is 45 minutes later. So because of the people, we can't cater, more than 50, 60 or 70 people at the same time. So there is no numbers, and it's been observed by the Paul Goddard, I think, on highway that it can't be more than 100 people, and it can't be 200 cars. So if car is driving towards the Palm Street, it doesn't mean that the car is actually going to the mosque. So we don't agree with that, what the objector said.
Thank you. Has that clarified the point, Councillor Williston, for you?
Frankly, it's confused me even more, but let's carry on.
I think you might get further information as the speakers come forward, and obviously we've yet to get the applicant. Okay, right, Councillor Abs first, and then Councillor Coulson.
Yeah, thank you. It's kind of been alluded to there, but on the site visit, it was absolutely stated that you weren't giving up the other site. So I'm really now confused as to why we suddenly are giving it up. And even if it's not a mosque, doesn't mean it wouldn't be potentially used for some other educational.
Councillor Abs, I don't. We are discussing the application in front of us. We're not discussing the existing mosque.
We are indeed, Chairman, but we're trying to establish do I have to think of this cumulatively or separately? Now, we've just had assurance that it is going to be closed, from all uses or just as a mosque?
Right. Okay. So, like I'm agree with the chairman. So we are discussing about the application. That is not part of the application, the current mosque. But I will answer it what you said. So the current mosque, as we said, we are moving. We don't have any intention to keep T mosque. Once we get the permission, and it's leased as well, we can't keep it forever. It will be closed down in the future. I don't know what's going to happen. Is it going to get business? Is it going to get something else? I don't know. So there is no intention to run to mosque. We are very clear about it. We will not be running to mosque under any circumstance. We can't afford it.
Yeah, that wasn't quite my question because I said other use. But let's put that aside.
So did you mean the building will be closed? We are not the landlord.
Let's move on from that for the moment. Okay. What is the capacity of the new building?
The new building. I'm not 100% sure about the total, but probably I'll leave it to the architect to answer it.
Okay, we can answer, but is it more or less?
It will be more because it's 2 floor. Yeah, 100% is more. It's 2 floor, and the current mosque is 1 floor.
Is the area larger or the same size?
So we don't know. We have not converted into a mosque yet, so we don't know. There is no work done inside. So the new one,
maybe the architect will be able
yes, he will answer it. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much. That was
right. Okay. I feel, I allowed you, Councillor Abs, to go on a little bit, and I did feel that some were not totally appropriate, and I think probably you'll get further clarification from the agent when the agent actually speaks in the few moments.
An inappropriate way.
Well, I mean, you've started asking the questions in relationship to overall numbers, and you've also referred to the previous building, which, of course, we were given an explanation regarding training at the site visit, if you remember, on Thursday. Right, Councillor Coulson.
Thank you. My question was just asked, so I'll wait for the architect. Thank you.
Right, any further questions of the supporter at all? Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
I now call upon Alvin Henderson, the agent. And I suspect some of the points you're going to raise or mention come up in the last presentation.
Well, quite possibly, yeah. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. First of all, let me clarify, I'm not an architect, I'm a planner, but I'm the agent for the application. I'm a planning director, Squires Planning, and we're the agents for the application, acting on behalf of the applicant. The purpose of this application is to allow the clients to relocate from their existing site to this site. Their existing site, as you've heard, they lease it, whereas they own the application site. Plus, the application site is a more preferable location. It's within the town centre, it's closer to other facilities, it's closer to car parks, bus stops, and it also has a car park itself. Therefore, the application site is a better site. It's better locationally, operationally, and financially. Your officer's report and the presentation from the case officer and the highways officer has provided, I think, a good summary of the site context. And then, obviously, you've all visited the site, or most of you visited the site on the site visit. The site context is particularly relevant here because the application is for a change of use. And the planning judgment for you as a committee is about the principle of the proposed use in policy terms, and then an assessment of the potential for harm or impact to amenity or to highways. I think it's also worth just re-emphasising, particularly given some of the comments from the objector we heard on the screen, that the application that you're deciding, it's not an application for a mosque. It's a planning application for a place of worship. So your considerations on these matters have to have regard to the site context, including its current permitted use and how it may be currently lawfully used. And we had some reference to this earlier on from your highways officer. The application is within the town centre. It's an inherently sustainable location, and the proposed use as a place of worship is fully supported by local plan policy, including policy DM39, which supports explicitly community facilities, such as places of worship, in such easily accessible locations. The current permitted use of the premises, as you've seen, is Class E, and its use as Class E is not constrained by any conditions currently. As your officers have outlined, that means the premises could be used for any use within Class E: shops, offices, fitness centre, health centre, a creche, a children's nursery, and you will appreciate all of those uses have their own associated travel and parking implications, which I don't need to specify. So in assessing the potential for harm or impact from the proposed use as a place of worship, this fallback position, this Class E fallback position of what the site could be currently be used for without planning permission is entirely relevant. Now, despite that fallback position, and arguably despite the inappropriateness of some seeking to use the planning system to somehow police the highway code or driver behaviour on the roads, despite that, our client has been happy to work with the planning and highways officers to address their concerns and provide the reassurance about potential traffic impact at or near the site. We heard from Paul Goddard how those negotiations have gone on. This has included providing what is now agreed management plan for the operation of the site's car park. The officers' report details how the proposal satisfies all applicable policy. There aren't any material considerations, none raised by your officers or any consultees or any objectors that indicate that permission should be refused.
No, up to 4 minutes.
Thank you. Rather, what we've got here, the use of this eminently sustainable site for a use that is entirely appropriate for a town centre and explicitly supported as such by the local plan. The use won't give rise to any additional unacceptable harm or impact, but rather will lessen the potential and scope for harm or adverse impact arising from the site's existing permitted use. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, members. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you very much for your presentation. You alluded to bus stops and town centre car parks, and although it's not mentioned in our report, there is on the portal a transport technical note. But I wondered if you had the answer to the question I posed before about the breakdown of the method of travel of the community that is using the current mosque and will presumably be one that continues to use the new one. Have we got some breakdown on that?
Not from me here right now as we speak. Okay. I don't know whether it was in our transport statement. I suspect there was probably something in there. I don't have that to hand, and I can't.
I think Councillor Vickers, I think probably not totally appropriate. I don't know.
No, I'll ask Mr. Goddard later.
Thank you. What I would say though, in response to that, is irrespective of what the current breakdown is, one of the advantages of the site that you're talking about, the application site, is that it is in a more sustainable location. And it is the type of uses that you should be encouraging in more sustainable locations, and indeed your policy directs that.
Okay, right, Councillor Coulson.
Thank you. Just two quick questions. The first one, you were specific about saying this wasn't an application for a mosque, but a place of worship, and I'd like to understand what the difference is. And secondly, do you have a view on the likely capacity in terms of prayer in the new building compared to the current building?
The relatively easy one for me, and the second one, no, I don't, because I don't know the numbers. And I'm that kind of floor space and stuff. I think the gentleman who just spoke, who's kind of there, you know, in the flesh, kind of set that out, though, hopefully appropriately. The difference between place of worship and a mosque. Obviously, a mosque is a place of worship, but the application, the way the planning system operates, it's a use class. It's a particularly a use, and that use is a place of worship. This could be an application for a Catholic church, a friend's meeting house, and everything else.
Okay, further points? No? Oh, yes, right, Councillor Wollaston.
I have no issue with this as a mosque whatsoever. I do have issues with the traffic position and indeed the ability to drive into that car park, turn round and come back out again. I might be a question for Mr. Goddard, but are there any traffic sweep plans that have been produced?
I think it'd be probably more appropriate when we get to the point of asking officers, Councillor Wollaston.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't realise that there was a question to me. Then I thought you were just. Do you need me to
it wasn't
say
a question for you,
anything?
'cause as a planner, well, you must have looked at the way cars can go in and out.
I haven't seen any kind of swept analysis.
Yeah, okay.
For this,
fair enough.
But it clearly operates in the way it operates right now as a car park.
It's a question of the numbers of people, though, isn't it?
And the nature of the application is there are no changes necessary to that car park other than just a layout.
Okay, we'll leave it with Mr. Goddard. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Right, are you going to take up your spot, Councillor Colson?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, fair enough. Right. Members, we immediately moving to questions of officers. Or Councillor Dick first.
May I have a So, I'm, as an aside, I don't know why we're spending time talking about the current mosque, because it's not inside the red line. We shouldn't be talking about it. Full stop. It's in the documents. The question of Mr. Goddard is, he's the professional person, and I hear what he's telling us, and he talked to us at great length. He wasn't at the site visit, and there was a neighbour, and I'm sure others will have captured this, who I think has a business next. And she suggested the two parking places she asked, and I'm sure our friends here will remember this. She suggested it might be sensible to move them from where they were originally planned. And I think you, sir, said immediately, of course, absolutely. So I don't know if that has got back to you. It was just to make more sense of the space for the very reasons that people are anxious about.
I think this did get back to me, but I think further clarification on the location of these two spaces was required. Is it the two parking spaces on the northern edge, or is it parking spaces immediately going in from Pound Street?
It's the two staff.
Right.
Look, I just want to make sure that that information is captured. I mean, in the end, you may not agree with it, but it seemed to be a sensible suggestion, and it seemed that the applicants thought it was a good idea too.
I would like.
Can I just stop you, Paul? I think Deborah is able to answer that particular point.
Thank you, Chair. Only in the sense, because I was obviously on the site visit, and just to confirm the spaces, they are the ones to the north of the site by the back wall.
Do you want to continue?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that clarification. I would refer members to condition 3 of your committee report, which says that a parking layout is to be submitted. It's only a draft.
So, Chairman, is that a yes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, we can. The condition is that a parking layout be submitted. So, this is useful. It'd be useful to know what members' views are on how they think that car parking layout can be improved. That condition can be adapted if members see fit, if there's specific requirements. So yes, it can, and the layout can change to accommodate concerns of members. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, you happy with that, Councillor Dick?
I heard a yes. I'm happy.
Yeah. Okay. Right, Councillor Vickers.
Yeah, just as a follow-up to that, I would like to see a condition that deals with the parking management. Now, there is you know, it's all very well having spaces, but how is the parking arrangement, and that includes drop off and pick up, going to be managed? I mean, there are some suggestions in on the portal of how the applicants are proposing to do it, but that's not the same as a condition, is it? And really a question either to you or to Mrs. Inston. Are there precedents for, and I think the answer is yes, but I'm surprised that, I mean, this is so crucial to the whole of this particular application that we aren't creating an inevitable problem for the immediate environment of traffic dropping off and picking up in the highway, which you said you'd observed yourself. And I'm not satisfied from what is in the report, i.e. including the conditions, that this can be managed. You know, having a plan is one thing, but managing the operation of that plan is another.
Right, Paul. Chairman, I would refer members to condition 2, where the parking and allocation management plan dated February 2026, received 6th of February. So the plan is referred to in that condition and secured that way. I would have no objection to a specific condition covering parking and allocation management if members see fit, subject to approval from via my planning colleagues who may wish to comment further. But I'm assured that the parking management plan can be enforced going forward.
Just to clarify, Chairman, when you said plans, that includes things that aren't sort of drawn plans. That includes other documents, does it?
Yes, there is a specific document. Okay. I did go through the document in my presentation earlier, and it covered all the items included within it when it summarised it.
Okay. Yeah, I think of plans as being just drawings rather than words.
Right, are you happy with that, Councillor Vickers? Right, Councillor Colston and Councillor Wollaston.
Thank you, Chair. Question for Paul. We've heard about, you know, drop off and pick up being important. We also heard from the objector that the keep clear box outside the entrance is often not kept clear, which means that it won't be possible to pick up and drop off. And I wondered whether we could change that to an orange crosshatch box or something else to make sure that, or give more chance of it being clear and therefore usable as per the plan. Thank you.
Chairman, that's a good question. I asked colleagues in traffic management this very question earlier on, and unfortunately the answer is no. We normally have, this is a sort of yellow hatched box that I'm sure we're all familiar with, and they're usually only provided at junctions. They're not provided in support of private accesses, was the response that I got. The keep clear markings are there. I think they could, from my observations, could do with repainting, and I'm sure we can pursue that via separate cover. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much.
Okay, right, Councillor Wollaston.
Can I come back to this question of the sweat path analysis and what's been done about it?
Good question. Nothing so far, but I consider that it could be covered by condition 3. If members wanted specific items like sweat path diagrams included in the condition, I'm happy for them to be in there, but I would expect them to be submitted in any case.
Just to get to the point, as far as I'm concerned, that's the whole nub of the issue on this application.
Yes, I agree. I want that car park to be usable for people. I want it to be used by picking up and collecting, and therefore I want it to be easy to use and laid out accordingly. So I fully support that. Thank you.
Okay. Right, Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, I've got a series of questions for you, Mr. Goddard, which you may be able to. First of all, the NPPF para 111. specifically says that cumulative impact is important. So contrary to what Mr. Dick said about it having no relevance, is the cumulative traffic in the area relevant or not irrelevant according to the MPP of para 111?
I would say that it isn't in this case.
So the MPPF is wrong?
No, I'm not saying it's wrong. What I would suggest to you is that the mosque is or the place of worship, my apologies, is already in this location.
Okay, all right.
I'm not expecting, according to the transport statement, any increase in numbers.
That's on the assumption of the move, of course,
Yes.
yes. So if that data holds true, then that's possibly, except the data you have is based on the existing capacity, not new capacity. Is that correct?
It is, but once again, as mentioned in the transport statement, they're not expecting a change in numbers.
I'm just trying to step through so I get a clear idea here. So the current mosque is on one side of the road and the new, place of worship is one side of the road, the new facility is on the other. So yeah, that side of the road is where the hatching that Councillor Wollaston was just, it's just been mentioned, the hatching was going to be repainted. That's the side of the traffic that if you look at Google Maps any day, you basically see it stopped and red, because that's where the traffic tends to back up. Would you agree or disagree? So the worst side of the road is in fact the north side of the road from a traffic perspective.
Hence my previous concerns. Yes, but there is a keep clear marking and
Okay, so the north is the worst side of the road, so we're not improving that. So in terms of the gap to get in, because it's clear that if we can't get a good flow in and out, then we've got a traffic issue. I measured it at 4.5 meters, the gap, and I asked at the site visit whether or not it was going to, the wall that was going to remain or not, and I was assured that the wall that exists that restricts it to 4.5 meters is going to remain. Is that your understanding as well?
That is my understanding, but I'm open to ideas upon it.
Yeah, but
incidentally,
we look at the application in front of us, so we got 4.5 meters to play with. And what is the two-way traffic width that is normally considered useful?
According to the Manual for Streets, 4.1 is possible to allow 2 cars to pass.
Possible? Did you say possible?
According to Manual
not desirable.
According to Manual for Streets, yes. Okay,
so online it says between 4.8 and 5.5.
That depends if large vehicles are used.
Which there will be requirement for large minivans was mentioned earlier. Was that not a large vehicle?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, so in addition to the two-way traffic, we have pedestrians. A lot have been made about pedestrians accessing and leaving. There seems to be quite a few, which is great. How much space do they require to get safely in and out?
As with all other car parking areas, I would expect pedestrians to be able to walk through the car park.
So with two-way traffic, they have to share with the pedestrians or don't have to share with the pedestrians?
They would share with the pedestrians, okay, as with most car parks.
So this 4.5 meters has got to now be able to deal with two-way traffic and pedestrians all at the same time. But that is going to allow free movement in and out of this restricted area. You're happy with that statement?
Yes.
Okay.
Consider the limited numbers of vehicles that actually drop off and collect as observed on site.
So how do I deal with the fact that other data points that were presented by the objector talk about significantly higher amounts of people attending the place of worship than in the data that the officers provided? How many data points did we take, and how many data points did they take?
I must say, I don't recognise the figures presided by the objectors.
So how many data points did we take?
Well, I would take the observations that I made on site and the table that is included in your update report.
I need to be clear, Mr. God, I'm not trying to catch anybody out here. I'm just trying to get to the data.
You're also not letting me answer.
But how many times did you measure the data?
I measured the data once.
Okay, and where did this data come from that's in front of me that's offered in a table?
That was presented by the applicants.
Okay, so no different than the objector then?
No difference to the observations that I made on site about
No, but to the validity of what I'm being offered, I give it as much weight as the objector then, correct? Because it's come from the same source, someone who wants me to look at something in a certain way. You're the only person, you're the only officer I should trust. So you've looked at it once, is that correct?
Yes, I've looked at the objectors' submissions. I don't recognise their figures of where they get hundreds of worshippers turning up. That's certainly not what I observed when I visited the site, and in 9 years ago.
I accept that you know your particular observation didn't match what she said, and it kind of matches what here, but this doesn't. These tables don't seem to take into account of any expansion or growth in the community, which I thought they were moving to expand the community.
I've been informed that by the applicants that they're not expecting significant expansion in the number of worshippers in the future. That's what I've read in their transport statement. I've taken that word in good faith. I have not observed the location being any busier during Friday lunchtime prayers in 2025 than what I observed in 2017.
That's fair enough, and I think we can accept, you know, that you observed no change in that time. But I guess my question would then be why move? But that's irrelevant, I suppose. In terms of the geometry of the actual space that you're then saying, okay, we're going to have some conditions that allow us to turn. Can you agree with me that we really want something that allows two-way traffic in and out of here? Any kind of stopping of that is going to cause and back up into the existing northern side of the road, and therefore cause an issue for the traffic that already uses that junction so close to the traffic lights.
Yeah, my aim is to ensure that two-way traffic can come in and out of that site, and with a width of 4.5 metres, again, as per Manufacture Streets, that would seem to be possible.
And would you also agree that if you can't, because it was mentioned forward gear all the time, and I get that, you're turning a circle, you stop to drop off or pick up and you move on and so on. So I get if you can do a circular motion and come straight back out again, but that's, the site is what, how many metres wide and deep?
It varies. Yeah, it's about 10 metres.
Big enough to put a 14-metre turning circle in?
I'm not anticipating a 14-metre turning circle. There's been some mentions of minibuses, but I've not observed any minibuses, and the applicants also haven't mentioned minibuses.
Okay, well, I mean, just out of interest, I did do a quick look on the internet as to what a turning circle of a car is. I didn't put minibus in, and it was down in the 12, 13, 14 metre area. So are you saying that cars can do significantly less than 9 metres?
Councillor Abbs, you know, I know you've got a concern about this car park, but yeah, I mean,
I haven't made a decision, Chairman. I'm trying to get the data right in my head, because if the traffic measure that we're going to say, oh, we'll put that in a condition, can't actually be met, then it becomes a highway safety issue. A highway safety issue is vastly different than trying to sort out a car park.
Chairman, I mean, I think. Sorry, Councillor Vickers. I mean, Councillor Vickers. Councillor Abbs, I've given you sort of quite a lot of leeway, and I know several members were hoping that I was going to try and stop you early on, but I felt it's appropriate to allow you to ask certain questions. But I think you'll find that Paul Goddard has actually, in his presentation early on, actually identified that he's going to be able to mitigate a lot of these concerns that you've got. So, you know, I do feel that you actually perhaps continued on the same same sort of questioning really of points which I thought at the end of the day, other members are going to take note of what Paul Goddard has said early on his presentation. Right, because I'm going to ask some questions in a minute. Right, Councillor Vickers.
Just to summarise, can you confirm, or through you, can planning officers confirm that if Mr. Goddard is unable to approve a planning condition, then the entire application lapses, not only for this application, but for anything under Class F, which would have the same problems with entry and exit?
Right, Deborah.
Sorry, Councillor Vickers, you couldn't just repeat that question, could you?
If any one condition associated with an application cannot be approved, then the entire application falls. And that would apply to any Class F application in that list that was produced earlier, and not just this one. Isn't that correct?
Yes, so with any planning consent that's conditional, if conditions can't be met or can't be discharged, then the consent can't be commenced.
So that would answer Councillor Abb's worry, which many of us actually share.
That's correct. The highways officer, if he receives information regarding the discharge of the condition number 3 and is satisfied with that information that it will manage the highway safety concerns that everyone has, then he would recommend it to be discharged. If not, then we would refuse the condition discharge, and it would go back and another one would be submitted, and we would work on it until we had an acceptable plan that the highways felt was acceptable. And
but if you couldn't find such a plan that highways thought was acceptable, the entire application falls.
Yes, that's correct.
And indeed, no work could start, and this would be a failed application, which might then apply to any Class F1 which had the same sort of conditions.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Vickers.
Right, Councillor Hooker.
Thank you. I think with all of us, the concern of this has been highways, and I was most concerned about this application until I heard Mr. Goddard's presentation, of which my fears weren't quite as...
We're not in debate yet.
No, it's a question. But my question here is, as I'm going to say, I was encouraged by that presentation. As a part of that presentation, there was mention, and I thought it was a considerable voluntary self-policing by the members on parking and pickup of stewards and all the rest of it. Now, going back to Councillor Vickers' point there of a parking plan and what have you, that was a voluntary issue. I asked this maybe of Mrs. Inston or Miss Cutts. How can we incorporate that as a condition that they do provide stewards and they do self-police in a way their parking? Because it's all very well saying we're going to do it, and that would say to me that alleviates my concern slightly if it's going to be policed. But if it's just an offer which fades away after a week or so, or there's no policing, and we get back to the concern position, that would worry me. But that's my question.
Who's going to answer that? You're going to...
I can answer that. Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, so within the application, they've provided a document which is the parking and management plan, and that sets out how the site would be policed, so that there was mention of CCTV check who's coming in and out. It'd be managed by stewards. And the parking arrangements, and this is secured in condition 2 in the list of the approved plans and documents. And so it would be like any other condition that we could enforce to make sure that they are operating in accordance with that condition, as with the parking arrangement plan that would subsequently be approved as part of the conditions, and the noise mitigation measures that will be secured. So the details in that document would be secured like the other reports that we secure all the time, like biodiversity enhancements where those are necessary. So it would be secured in that way.
Thank you.
Okay, right, Councillor Dick.
Sorry, I've anticipated we're going into debate.
Not
Chairman.
quite yet.
Forgive me, Chairman,
quite,
but
no.
remember me.
Well,
Thank
well,
you.
when we get, let me just ask a couple of questions, and then I'm going to put something to you, members, because I'm looking at the clock. But I'll ask a question first. Paul, obviously, this is a real stressing issue regarding members looking at this parking. Had you considered at all any issues that could affect existing parking in Pound Street? I.e., obviously, we know the parking zone area is oversubscribed. We know certain parts of the road is double yellow lines. But there is also other parts of the town where we got loading or unloading. Anything considered at all about drop-offs at all? There's Hampton Road, the other side of the road. It's just a thought process of mine, and I don't know whether you've actually thought of that at the time when you're considering how you're going to overcome this particular parking on the park outside the building.
Thank you, Chairman. No, we haven't considered that. That would mean a change to traffic regulation orders on the public highway. That would be subject to a separate consultation process, which couldn't be guaranteed. It would have to be done very much as a separate process outside of this planning application. We couldn't have the planning application relying on such things because we cannot guarantee that the public would approve of such measures in any consultation. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it does answer the point, and I was also thinking of the timescale as well. Members, 9:30, we've got another application. I presume the speakers for that application are sat out in the lobby. We've got to go into debate. Are we going to get even to extend it to 10:30? Do you think is going to be an issue? Do you think we should notify them that we're not going to be able to?
What I would say is we can only extend at 10:30. We think we're going to conclude.
Chairman, I think having been to the site visit, we probably could conclude in, say, about 3/4 of an hour for that application.
It really depends on how quickly you can come to a decision on this.
On this one, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Let's. Right. Sorry. Paul, quickly.
Chairman, there was one thing I wanted to come back to, and Councillor Abbs's questions were all quite reasonable in my view, but there is one point that I would come back to, and that is that the use of the site, there could be a creche in there tomorrow. There could be a convenience store in there tomorrow, and I'd have no control over it. And it would use that car park and that access, and I would have no control over it, all the vehicles that were coming in and out of there for those uses, which wouldn't actually require a planning application because it's Class E. At least with this, we can improve the car parking now, and we can have a parking management plan with stewards that would have some control over the use of that car park and how it's used. This is a far better arrangement than some of the uses that we could have already tomorrow with some of the Class C uses in there. You know, I do appreciate a lot of the concerns that Councillor Abbs raised, but that is the situation that we are in with Class E, and this is a better way forward in my view.
Okay, right. Councillor Hooker, is this to open the debate question?
No, one more question. I notice in here, Ms. Cutts, that there is a kitchen. The provision of food, that covered by this application, or would that be separate by environmental health, should it be thought that they would like to provide food?
In my experience, provision of food and drink as part of a place of worship isn't an unusual feature. If they're providing food to members of the public or some other chain, you know, if there's commercial cooking taking place, then that may be a change of use. and would require separate consideration. But if it's ancillary to the main use as a place of worship, then that doesn't raise any concern to me.
Okay, councillor Hooker, you happy with that answer? Okay, right. Who's going to empty it? Are you going to open the debate, councillor?
If you allow me, Chairman. So clearly, the issues here are about traffic and parking, and on the site visit was a very bad day. It was wet, it was windy, there was a big group of people. It was a mess. And we were all looking, thinking, so I've been back a couple of times because there's two issues. There's the traffic generated by the mosque and there's the general background traffic, and it's the two together when they overlap. And I was greatly reassured by my own personal visits. I could see there was capacity. I'm sure there's going to be a few pinch points, but I could see that. We've had professional advice from across the room that we can make a condition that parking is properly policed with a small p. This man's a professional person. If he's telling us members that he can do this, having done the kind of site work that he's done, then I'm very, very pleased to hear that. I'm very confident in his judgment. I'm hugely impressed by this application, and I'm very keen to propose it when you tell me I can.
Okay, right, I'll bear that in mind, Councillor Dick. Right, Councillor Foot next, and then I've got Councillor Apps, and then Councillor Vickers.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Just a couple of things, observations I'd like to make. My local church is St Nicholas's Church in Newbury, and every Sunday there's probably, well, I would estimate 300 to maybe even 400 worshippers there. It's a very successful church. And when it was built in 1533, unfortunately, they didn't consider car parking. So most people have to walk or cycle or park their car somewhere in town and walk to the site. Now, I happen to live on Enbourne Road, which is, as you know, further up from Pound Street. And I'm struck because I tend to spend quite a lot of time coming to and from this establishment for various meetings. I often see worshippers going to the place of worship on Pound Street, walking. They're walking there, lots of them, to and fro, and people make their own arrangements. There are drop-offs, etc., etc. And at the moment, they have absolutely no car parking facilities for where they are at the moment. So I think my colleague, Councillor Dick, has proposed that we accept this application. I'm quite happy to second that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, I'm just going to take the other two speakers and then I'll come back to you too. Right, Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. The nature of the use of the building is not really relevant to me. I'm not a person of faith, and so someone wanting to worship anything is up to them. I have no interest at all personally. I'm only interested in planning matters and how an application might impinge on planning matters. So that's what I'm going to focus on in my overview here. There are several issues with the site, which I was trying to get to with Mr. Goddard, because Mr. Goddard has a set of information and gives a professional judgment on a set of information. And he didn't say he could sort it. He said he might be able to sort it in terms of having the conditions. So we don't have certainty. What we have certainty of is certain things have been made worse. Closer to that traffic light is worse in terms of impact. The north side of the road is worse. The gap that we have, 4.5 metres, Mr. Goddard said 4.1 is the minimum. The standard is more at 4.8 or 5.5 to have two-way traffic. Add in safe pedestrian access, because people are talking about lots of people walking there. So we're into the 6 or 7 metres. So it's way outside of what will allow free-flowing traffic in and out of the site. So if we then add in, which was I was trying to get to with the dimensions, if the dimensions, the geometry of the internals don't allow for a clean drop-off and pick up and drop-off and pick up in a circular motion and in and out, we end up stopping. As soon as someone has to stop, reverse, park, we're going to slow everything down. Now, whether it's 60, 120 or 180 people is somewhat irrelevant. That doesn't matches the other uses. I can imagine as a fitness club, maybe you'd start to get to that number, but this is regular peak time attendance that is known and is intended to grow because the community is growing and we need to support that. But it's going to be an increased use of the site. So what we know today, what we've seen today, doesn't actually match what will be, what we're approving, and the hope that we might be able to put a condition on doesn't really match in my mind. Now, in terms of where we sit with planning applications, planning policy, as we've been told many, many times, the NPPF is the kind of the top of all of this. And the NPPF is very clear about cumulative traffic effects. So it's very clear that we need to take into account the overview or the overall things that are happening within Powell Street. And the objector did actually point a few of them out, but we are a growing society, so there'll only be more, there won't be less, and therefore that junction will get worse and worse. I'm not aware of any changes being proposed to the junction in terms of making it easier. So the NPPF basically starts to say you have to take cumulative effects into account. Well, what I am doing, and therefore that gives me a problem. Any proposal needs, I think the following section basically says you need to basically take care of everybody, not just as one part of the community. So it doesn't meet that. Our own local plan starts, I'm trying to remember the numbers of the plan, is 9 and 10, I think they are. I'd have to look it back up again. But basically talk about we have to build things for the good of all, not for just the goods of one or two. So, it's fine hoping and wishing, and there's no issue with the who's going to use it. It's quantity of people that might be using it and how that will grow. And the only evidence we have is that requirement will grow, not that it will go back. There wouldn't be really, other than we own the building, you've got a capacity for 300.
I don't want to stop you, Councillor Abbs, because I think you're making some quite some valid points. But having said that, I am conscious we've had a proposal and we've had a seconder. I did say I would take the other 3 speakers, thinking it was going to be short statement, but not carrying on. And I'm also conscious that Councillor Vickers, who wants to speak to this in the moment, has made a statement that he felt the other application we get through in 3/4 an hour. Well, if we're not pretty quick now, we're not going to get through that. And so I'm sorry, Councillor Abbs, to stop you, but
the chairman, that is really not on. This is supposed to be debate. The fact that you've got another application to do, I get that. But we have to consider every application in detail. We started with a proposal and a seconder. I'm the first person to offer any kind of alternate perspective of it. So we're not just going to rush through on something that could have a major impact on that area, surely.
Councillor Vickers, I'm not trying to rush through. If I'd have actually taken a decision on the proposal and seconder immediately, several other speakers wouldn't have had a chance to speak anyway. So, I think I've been fair and reasonable. Right, Councillor Vickers, let's move on.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we knew what Councillor Abbs's position was in the long question and answer session we had with Mr. Goddard. I actually live, I think, closer, probably within 450 metres of the site. I visit the co-op most days with the shopping that I've forgotten to get in the supermarkets. I have never, in the 25 years that this mosque has been open, noticed any traffic problems whatsoever. And I have, like Councillor Foot, seen most of the people attending mosque on foot and the occasional taxi, very few car parks. Now, last Friday, during the prayers time, I hung around, walked all the streets within 500 metres, right as far as my own home, and there were 21 free parking spaces available for at least an hour each, irrespective of the public paying car parks there may be in the town centre. I think we should also take account of what the supporter said about the Equalities Act. We have here a faith community that is growing in its attendance at its worship sessions in a way that any other faith community would be quite jealous of, frankly. My own faith community is the Catholic Church, and we are getting close to capacity. And when we do, we will have to look for new premises. Fine. I'm sure that's going to be the case with this one. So I have no hesitation in thinking that providing we get the support of Mr. Goddard to the drawings and the arrangements, I would like to see condition number 3 actually mention the word parking management and enforcement. I know they are covered in the voluntary document that is part of the plan and is specifically mentioned as one of the approved plans in condition 2. But I think I will have faith in my highways officer that he's not going to leave us with a massively increased traffic problem that cannot be dealt with through that condition. So I'd be very happy to support a proposal when it's made.
Thank you. Right, quickly.
No, don't want to elongate this any longer, Chair.
It's not, it was just a straightforward point. Okay, Councillor Coulson.
Yeah, it was just very quickly. I think others have said traffic is the key thing, but as Mr. Goddard has said a couple of times, Class E already exists, and this move to Class F gives us the opportunity to improve the situation versus whatever could happen right now. So from a planning perspective, I think we're totally in the clear. We will have enforcement as part of that condition. And frankly, I think this council should use traffic enforcement officers should go on a regular basis to see that wider traffic conditions are managed as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving back to the proposer and seconder, do we need to consider certain conditions?
There were certain new words suggested for conditions 2 and 3 are tightening, and we'd like
just
to hear
3, Chairman.
I think Paul referred to 2 as well. But I stand corrected.
Paul?
Chairman, the condition 2, the parking allocation management plan, which is a document, details how the parking will be managed. The only suggestion I made is whether that was a separate condition, but I'm advised by my planning colleagues that that isn't really necessary because it's listed in there. Condition 3, I think you may have had some suggestions to strengthen that.
Well, just I think in terms of presentation and conceding that this is the main issue, I think if the wording of condition 3 included the words management and enforcement, either in the heading.
Covered in condition 2 is the question.
Right. I'm happy to answer, Chair.
Carry on.
Councillor Vickers. Condition 3 is requiring the submission of further documents, whereas we already have the parking and management plan. It is included in the approved plans condition, so it is required by that. It can be a separate condition on its own, so the parking should be managed in accordance with that, and we can make it a little bit more specific, so it kind of, that there's no reason why we couldn't do that. We'll leave it in the approved plans, but have a separate condition just to ensure that it's maintained and managed thereafter in accordance with that plan, and just be a little bit more specific. We can add another condition.
Chairman, that's what I proposed, because I proposed that we follow Paul's tightening of the word. That's all I said. So.
Okay, you're happy. Okay.
Yeah, most seemed minded to approve. My major concern is to do with volume, as I thought I was trying to make clear. So, and if we, is it possible at all to add constraints on the use to avoid the traffic issue becoming one? So in other words, if we are to say Friday prayers as 120 within the 2-hour period, that we would set a limit of attendance of 150.
Are we in that position?
It wouldn't meet the tests of reasonableness to restrict. And it would be difficult to enforce without someone measuring.
The other is difficult to enforce as well, but okay, I thought I'd ask.
Okay, nothing further. Can I therefore put the proposer and seconder of the to approve this particular application to the vote, please? All those in favour, please show. Going to vote against for it. Against and abstentions. So for the application, there was it eight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Eight for and 1 abstention. The motion was passed to accept the application. Thank you very much. I suggest if you feel you want to leave at this point, leave quickly, and we're going to call upon the speakers for the other application to come in pretty quick. No, that's who do we need to? Yeah.
It's unlikely to be finished.
Good evening and welcome to. I'm sorry you were put outside in the lobby. We're in some difficulty now because even though we would put a proposal to extend to 10:30, we feel with a number of speakers we could well be in some difficulty. So there's only going to be one speaker for the applicant, but there's a speaker for the parish council and an objector, correct?
Jim, and this reminds me of the Eagle Quarter application, and if we actually just got on to debating it, we would have got through the final debate and to a decision. I think if we start, worst case, we don't conclude, in which case we have to reconvene, and all we need to do is agree a date to reconvene.
I think the problem is we don't have a date at the moment, so we might have to wait to the next committee, and then this will all have to be repeated because it will be too far apart. It would be different if we had time, say tomorrow, which we could go into. So
We have time tomorrow. Okay.
Well, I don't think the whole committee does. I think that's the problem. So the concern for the applicants and anyone else here is if we do go ahead, you could be repeating this all again. And we really should only extend if we think we're going to conclude. And I think planning officers don't feel you're going to conclude. It's obviously up to members, but that's the planning officer view.
What is your view, members? Quickly.
How long's the officer's presentation? I mean, that's 10 minutes, then they can trim that.
I mean, I can make it short, but obviously not all members were on site as well. So that doesn't, I need to make sure that every member does know what we're addressing. And obviously I want to ensure that the objectors' points are also heard. That's the whole point. It does come to committee. So I don't, at the same time, I want to get through it for the applicant's sake and for the objectors because they've waited. But I think they are entitled to fair representation and I feel like we would be rushing it.
I was just trying to work out, you've got 3 speakers, did we say 15 minutes, 10 minutes for the officer, 25 minutes, that takes us, we got enough for 10 minutes of debate. I mean, that's...
I mean, from the chair, I'm happy providing people do really reduce their speaking right time. And if that's...
I think people can't reduce it if they've got points to make. So we can prevent repeated points, but we can't, just to be clear, I don't think anyone should be stopped from saying what they want, but obviously you can stop repeated points being made.
Councillor Foot.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I must admit, much as I would love to get this finished, particularly for the people that have been sitting outside for so long, I don't think it's fair if we rush this. I think our officer, Ms. Kirby, was absolutely right that, you know, everybody's got to have a fair crack of the whip. And I don't think it would give us enough time personally, but that's just my view.
Any other comments at all? Otherwise, are you going to propose that?
I'm going to propose we extend till 10:30, but you may vote against me, but I'm proposing it formally, Chairman. Let's get on with it, one way or the other.
Seconder?
Happy to second.
All those in favour? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's carried. 5, is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay. Well, without further
Chairman, I
ado,
think you can make it clear to the applicant that if it does go out of time, it's going to have to be reheard maybe in a month.
We won't be continuing after 10:30. I can assure you.
Any decision after 10:30
Okay,
wouldn't be
so
valid is the problem.
Without further ado, I'm now going to move to item 4, application 25/01921/House at Western Lodge, West Woody, and I'm going to immediately hand over to the case officer presenting it, Cheyenne Kirby. Right, okay, Cheyenne.
Thank you very much, Chairman. This has been brought to committee as we've received over 10 letters of objection and member call-in. This application is a large detached dwelling with outbuildings located outside any settlement boundary within the North Wessex Downs National Landscape. There is a vehicle access to the dwelling located along Hatch House Lane. It is also noted that there is an agricultural access which exists along West Woody Road. However, this falls outside the red line, so does not form part of this application. Amended plans were received during the course of the application, relocating the proposed parking to ensure it sits wholly within the established residential curtilage, which is demarcated with the red line. The main changes proposed to the dwelling include removal of both chimneys and construction of a new chimney and alterations to the roof line, as you can see in red on the screen. So to the north elevation, which is the top one. Oh no, hang on, I've written west elevation, apologies. Is a new first floor window opening, which is on the far right, and then a new ground floor door opening on the bottom left of that image. And then on the south elevation, which is the bottom image as shown on the screen, is for a new parapet roof with metal balustrade and new first floor doors changed from windows. To the east elevation on the top screen is a minor first floor extension to level the external wall and provide a new window opening, new door and window openings at ground floor, and removal of one first floor side window. To the north elevation, which is the bottom image on the screen, is for the recessed cavity infill to replace the removed door and window. The proposal aims to improve the overall appearance of the dwelling by rationalising previous extensions to to achieve a more uniform appearance. Whilst the historic farmhouse character has been eroded over many years through earlier additions, the proposal does not increase the overall footprint, and the materials proposed match the existing dwelling. The proposal also seeks for the demolition and rebuild of the annex/garage outbuilding. The existing footprint is approximately 46.9 square metres, with garage doors on the south elevation, and the replacement outbuilding would be on the same siting with a slightly larger footprint of approximately 60 square metres, and a garage doors relocated to the western elevation. The existing outbuilding also contains an internal staircase leading to first floor accommodation within the roof space, served with dormer windows to the east and west. The replacement outbuilding provides an enclosed external staircase leading to first floor roof space accommodation, also with east and west dormers, and includes a small balcony to the south elevation. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Well done. Sorry, you hesitated, and I was wondering when you were coming back. Okay, apologies, Cheyenne. Right, quickly, Paul.
Chairman, I have no objection to this planning application. There's no impacts on the local highway. Thank you.
Okay. Right, Robert McDonald.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for.
If you would let me know the formats in 5 minutes. Thank you to thank you to the committee for cracking on with this.
Do we need to put the clock on, or are you going to go quick?
Yes, please. 4 and 5 minutes, if I may. So I'm speaking on behalf of West Woodley Parish Meeting. We have no objection to the alterations to the property or the garage at all. And we do appreciate that the application has been amended already to address some of our initial concerns. So that's all very good. However, we do have concerns about the lighting. We would just like to be allowed to comment on the proposed lighting strategy. There's no details provided in the application, but we would like to be able to comment, because our experience to date with the applicants, who not only own Western Lodge, but also Lake House, it's all combined now, have a history of illuminating trees, gateways, driveways and buildings, which is upsetting to the neighbours and against our dark skies policy. So we would like to be consulted before it's approved, if possible. We do object, though, to the removal of the ancient pond. This is within the curtilage. It's the destruction of the irreplaceable habitat, which has already commenced. You probably all saw when you were at the site visit that they've already started moving spoil and things, and have completely removed the ancient pond. West Berkshire Council archaeologists did request further information regarding the pond, but was told by the applicant's architect that they were unaware of its presence during their ownership. Well, we feel that this is an unacceptable answer, because the house itself was called Fishpond's House in the first place. When the previous owner sold it in 2022, there was a fish pond. There are photographs documented within the application and everything, you could see them. Those were from the sale details. The fish pond is very present, very obvious. And if you look at Google Earth maps also submitted from 2008 and 2020, you see the pond. But now in 2025, the last photo from Google Earth, it's gone. So we want to know what the planning officer and the committee feel about the commencement of earth movement and the removal of this ancient pond and the loss of the irreplaceable habitat. And then finally, we do object to the inaccurate site plans. The site plans show tracks all across the agricultural land, which either don't exist on the physical ground or have been constructed without permission. There's sort of 2 lots. We fear that by approving this application, it will somehow validate or grant their existence. The applicant has never applied for the tracks that do exist, or the change of use of the agricultural fields. And as the applicants are now grouping Lake House and Western Lodge together as a broader thing, and they state this in your report as well. They have a history of this because what they're actually doing is seeking a second driveway for the estate, for the vineyard and the associated operations. They've done this before. 2 or 3 years ago, they had applied and they had constructed a track across farmland coming out to another neighbouring house called Hatch House Farm. They claimed it had already existed for many, many years, but it hadn't. And we provided, again, photography and Google Earth maps showing that it hadn't. It was refused when they applied. It was again rejected when they took it to appeal. Thank you. But we feel they're repeating the same approach. They've already put the linking drive between the two properties with no application. And because it's shown on
Coming
this...
up to 4 minutes.
Because it's shown within this application, we feel it's going to pass under the radar. It'll be rubber stamped. And when they come back with the next application, they'll claim it was always there. So if you do approve it, our concern is they will end up with this new access on the road, West Woody Road. It's overdevelopment, putting tracks across the AONB and farmland. It's urbanisation of the landscape. And it has not been considered by highways. We have safety concerns if they do it. So if you're going to approve it, please introduce some conditions according to the change of use of the fields, according to the access point coming out of the field, or insist on accurate site plans, please, which have not been forthcoming so far. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions, members? No? Okay.
Nothing.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Moving on to the objector, Simon Hayes. Again, 5 minutes, and we'll notify you after 4 minutes.
Yes, that would be great. Just before I start, I'm very conscious that what Robert has said, I might repeat some of it, so I will try and cut some of what I'm going to say out just to be kind to you and ourselves. Okay. I'd like to begin by thanking the Planning Department for their decision to pursue the enforcement action regarding the illegal tracks and the proposed drive that have already started. We generally appreciate that. Looking at the revised application tonight, I have no significant objections, bearing in mind that I'm a neighbour and my house and fields border both Lake House and Western Lodge. I am concerned about the lighting that goes from the trees on Western Lodge into the cottages opposite their back drive. Frankly, it's inobtrusive and it's quite unpleasant for the people who actually live there. They're not my houses, they're somebody else's, but I've been asked to make the point. The other thing that we would be interested about is restoration of the missing pond would be interesting. And I think it would certainly tick your biodiversity boxes if you have any here on the council. It has been asked why we object to the illegal tracks and the potential back drive linking Western Lodge. The answer is simple. These are unauthorised hardcore tracks running through what is designated A&OB agricultural land. Again, as Robert said, the inspector 2 years ago ruled these were illegal and should be removed, but the latest ones have not been. Although significant changes have been made to the site plan, we are still concerned that somehow the red lines and the blue lines will not get through properly. And we want your understanding and confirmation that the proper plans will be looked at by you guys if you grant permission tonight. And because 10 years ago, the neighbouring property, Lake House, was able to, sorry, I've lost it, was granted a much larger curtilage, purely because it was shown on the block plan of an earlier approved planning application, despite it not being forming part of the original application. So we're really wary about what's happened in the past on this site. It is important to understand the applicant's motivation for this proposed possible second entrance for both properties. They don't want lorries, commercial vehicles, or employees using the main drive. The official explanation is that the current lake house entrance is too narrow for large vehicles. This is simply not true. We object because it would be seemingly used for large trucks and farm vehicles relating to Lake House and not necessarily Western Lodge, for which this planning application is meant to relate. And it goes alongside the stables, barn and land belonging to another West Woody resident. And it exits onto a village road close to a junction, which is regularly frequented by horses, riders, as well as walkers with children and dogs. You have encouraged us in the past to deal directly with the Browns to resolve our issues. So I have met with Beatrice Brown, the owner of both properties effectively, over drinks at my house to discuss possible solutions. We would like to find a way around all these issues. We're already competing with massive lorries that block our driveways, wrecking the verges while they queue or ready to use this illegal back entrance. Although we had a pleasant meeting with her, she was not open to discussions, though I suspect in the long run, this could prove a lot cheaper for anyone than further planning inspector sessions and the significant time that this consumes for all parties, yours, ours, and the planning departments. She promised to follow up, but despite reminders, we've heard nothing since. Nevertheless, we remain open to discussions with the Browns at any time. Thank you for your time this evening. So please remember the lights, the pond, and the correct site plan, please. That's it.
Okay, thanks very much, Simon. Right, questions at all? No? Okay. Fair enough. Thanks very much. Ian Blake, you're speaking on behalf of your colleagues as well.
I am, yes. Yes.
Okay, away we go.
Okay, right. Chair, members, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. I'm addressing you as the applicant's architect, an agent in support of this application, which, as you know, relates to Western Lodge, West Woody. I'm also joined by the applicant's planning consultant, Richard Anstis, and the project manager, Adam Wojecki. The proposal before you is extremely modest. Minor elevation adjustments and the rebuilding of the existing garage annex to create a cohesive and architectural design across the building. These facts are clearly set out in the application description and supporting documents, and we welcome the officer's accurate report to the members earlier, not only in the correct description of the very minor proposal and recommendation for approval, but also in its highlighting to the council's obligations to eliminate any harassment and victimisation prohibited under statute. At your site visit, those members who attended saw firsthand the limited and non-contentious nature of the works. You were able to appreciate the negligible visual impact, and the proposal effectively tidies up an existing house rather than enlarging or altering its role within the landscape. But let me address directly a point that was raised briefly during the visit, the use of the property. I want to be completely clear that there is no change of use proposed. Western Lodge is and will remain a private dwelling as part of the Lake House estate. The planning officer confirmed this during the site visit, and it's reflected in the application documents. Members were reminded in the officer report that at the meeting, that your consideration must solely include the proposed works within the red line, the elevations and the garage annex rebuild, no wider estate considerations, no speculative concerns, and no external matters beyond the scope of the proposal are part of this application or for your consideration. However, objections from the parish meeting, as you've just heard, have brought us here this evening, which are both inaccurate and, in any event, entirely irrelevant to the application proposal. Allow me respectively to address those points. Firstly, external lighting. There's no external lighting scheme submitted as part of this application. As the case officer correctly advises you, any future lighting proposal will be dealt with by condition, a draft of which is at condition 5 in the officer report, which we fully accept. We will, of course, be guided by, in any event, by the dark skies compliance strategy, entirely consistent with West Berkshire's quality design SPD, Part 5 external lighting, and the Northwest Extends dark skies guidance. Secondly, physical links or estate roadways between Lake House and Western Lodge. No such works are proposed. There are no new tracks, paths or estate connections within the red line, and the application proposal before you are only modest works to an existing building and ancillary outbuilding. Biodiversity, the site sits within a sensitive landscape, and we recognise that. The application proposes no change in use of land, no extension to the boundaries, no vegetation clearance, and no unauthorised lighting. Accordingly, it does not create biodiversity loss. This is fully consistent with the core strategy CS17, which requires conservation and enhancement of biodiversity. The scheme aligns with that expectation. And then finally, visual impact on the Northwest Extends national landscape. At the site inspection, you can see for yourselves that the proposed changes are both minor and sympathetic. Under the NPPF, great weight is given to conserving and enhancing the landscape.
You're on 4 minutes.
Okay, I'm all there. And landscape and scenic beauty in the national landscapes, and rightly so. Even this very minor proposal has been designed and after great weight is given to considering this designation, and therefore it is therefore, appropriate, well designed, and conserves and enhances the national landscape. The materials will match the existing house, and the rebuilt garage annex sits on the existing relationship of buildings, delivering a cleaner, more coherent form that improves design quality in accordance with core strategy CS14 and CS19. Finally, I would like to remind members that the officer recommendation is to approve, subject to the conditions that we've talked about, and the application is only before you because the parish meeting made objections that your officer correctly identifies as being entirely irrelevant to this proposal.
5 minutes.
In closing,
please.
I've got one line left. In closing, this is straightforward, policy compliant, small scale improvement to an existing home within a national landscape. And it just.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Questions, members?
Thanks, Ian, through you, Chair. Could I ask, I mean, again, this isn't strictly relevant, but would your client be amenable to replacing the pond? Clearly, that is quite a contentious issue, and I'm just wondering if there would be any scope to replace that.
I can't answer that because that's outside the red line of this application, unfortunately.
No, it's not. It's not. Okay, right. Councillor Abs.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you knew when the pond was filled in, which is within the red line. It's clearly marked on the map and Google Earth. I just checked it. It would be well within the red line.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, it doesn't form part of this application.
Well, it's within the red line then. So do you know when the pond was filled in by any chance?
I don't.
Okay, thank you.
It doesn't plan permission to fill in the pond, does it? I think that's what the planning officer says.
That's correct. Yes, it's not protected in any way, and it doesn't require planning permission to fill in.
Was that the point, Councillor Colson?
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Councillor.
Just a small point. You mentioned that there was modest change to the annex. Can you explain that? You're knocking it down.
Sorry,
another one.
The garage, yes. The garage is being demolished and rebuilt on the same footprint. Yeah. Well, the garage doors are being located on the different elevation, so we can't pick the existing building up and turn it, so it's having to be rebuilt.
Thank you for the clarification of modest. Yeah, thank you.
Right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, ward members are not going to speak, are they?
I will say what I need to say in the debate, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Did we have Councillor Bennyworth on Zoom at all? No. Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. Right, questions to officers then. Right, Councillor Dick.
Just a quick one. Listening to the objections, lighting is conditioned, so that's really good. The pond we've heard is immemorial, as some people would say. So these tracks, and the word enforcement was mentioned at the site meeting. Are those two things connected, just for information?
So thank you, councillor. So on the site plan, it shows several tracks. So there's one to the north which attaches to West Woody Road. It's outside the red line, and there is separate enforcement matters on that. And then I think the parish council were referring to, like, on the plan outside the red line, there's like swooped lines. So they're landscaping. So they're outside the red line, so I can't consider them, but as an informal chat with the agent informed me that they're part of the landscaping work, so they're more likely to be mown tracks, which don't require.
Obviously I'm not interested outside the red line. I just wanted to know if the tracks were subject to enforcement, and that's good to hear.
And there's an informative on the update sheet, just to suggest that anything outside the red line is not approved, etc. It's just to make it clear that the only works we're accepting would be the ones within the red line and within the proposal only.
Councillor Gaines.
Yeah, I'm a bit concerned about what one of the objectors said about the fact that in a previous situation, there was a site plan that then became basically in situ because of the site plan was accepted. We're in condition 2, we've got approved plans there, and we've got the location plan. Are we definitely saying that that track is not in that location plan and it won't be used later on to reinforce the fact that that track's there?
So it may be within the location. I can double check for you, but strictly speaking, it's only what's in the description and the approved and rather than what's necessarily shown in the plan. I wasn't the case officer of Lake House at that time, so I don't, but I was the case officer for the previous tracks that went to enforcement hearings, etc. But the location plan is just to show the location of the site. It doesn't necessarily approve any other works. It's only the description that would approve.
Thank you.
Did you want to come in? Sorry.
I was just going to really quickly clarify that the previous application, sometimes you have issues if the red line can be bigger than the residential curtilage in some cases, so that causes confusion unless it's specified in the application. In this case, the red line is the residential curtilage, so it's not an issue in this application.
Okay, right, Councillor Foot.
No, actually, Ms. Inston has just answered my question, because obviously there was some discussion about the red line with this application, so I think you've clarified that. Thanks.
Okay. Further questions? Right, Councillor Hook.
I think one for Ms. Kirby. Construction plan. One of the presenters was concerned about whether lorries and what have you were making access currently. Is there anything in the access plan that actually will determine the access and exit of these vehicles to ensure they don't come in on another entrance, or do we actually state which entrance they will come in on?
Thank you, councillor. We haven't requested a construction management statement because I think the vehicles that I think they're referring to, the parish council are referring to, I believe are coming from Lake House itself. But also if any vehicle is using that access, again, that may be subject to enforcement action. So we would assume they would use their lawful access, and any vehicles using that track outside the red line, etc., that would be separate and be under the enforcement action.
Thank you.
Councillor Vickers.
Mr. Quickie, I'm just at a Google of when is planning consent required for earthworks in the countryside in a protected landscape? And it says the answer, whenever work constitutes a significant engineering operation that alters the character of the land. So wouldn't you agree that the removal of a pond alters the character of the land in a protected landscape? So why isn't it one of the conditions of this application, or why isn't there a retrospective to make sure that pond is reinstated?
Thank you, councillor. The pond is not part of the proposal. We may have required planning permission for them to fill it in depending on the scope of it, but we would have required ecology information, but seeing as that it's already gone and it seems to have been a while, there is nothing we can do, and we can't put a condition on to put the pond back because it wouldn't meet the tests and it's not part of the proposal, so we can't consider that, if that makes sense.
Okay, members, we exhausted the questions. Who's opening the debate? Councillor Councillor Hooker.
Yeah, I'll kick it off. I've got no objection at all to the alterations to the house. I think it's a great improvement. Nice site and all the rest of it. I am slightly surprised in the acceptance of the design of the cladding of the annex. I don't think it is particularly in character with the existing house, but the planning officer's made no comment, so we'll run with it.
Councillor Vickers.
Yeah, the reason I called it in, and in fact, there were more than 10 objectors, so I couldn't have withdrawn the application, is because of the perceived harm to the national landscape owing to the extent of the changes from agricultural use of land to domestic. And it is within, or at least straddling, the site boundary where those changes have been made. So, we've heard enough from the officers to know that they don't hold any, reason doesn't hold any weight in this matter. But I will not be supporting an approval. I've just got to decide whether I abstain or vote against that, because I think there's nothing that I could object to with the changes to the buildings.
Thanks, Councillor Vickers. Right, Councillor Gaines.
Thank you, Chair. I'm actually very disappointed. In the actual plans, I think are great. I think the house is lovely. I think the annex is good too. I am very disappointed that the applicant takes so little consideration of the local people there and their lighting. I think, to dismiss the lighting element of that, I think is disgraceful. It is a dark sky area. It is in an AOMB, and I think they should be considering what the local people think. And I'm disappointed that the applicant didn't do that. But on the basis of the actual plans that we're supposed to be considering this evening, then I've got no problems with it at all.
Thank you. Okay, I'm looking around the table for a proposal. Councillor Hooker.
I'm quite happy to propose that.
And Councillor Wollaston's second in it. Conditions. Deborah.
I think the lighting's covered, isn't it? Is the lighting?
So we can cover the external lighting to the buildings, but we can't, any other lighting is domestic lighting that doesn't require planning permission, so I can't control that, but I can but there's a plan for the lighting to any of the buildings.
Okay. Chair, does that include trees?
No, I can't control domestic lighting to trees, unfortunately.
And gates?
Again, no.
Are you still happy with the proposal and seconder in view of what's just been said?
Yeah, I just think it's a shame. So,
well, Chairman, if it was allowed to have a condition which says, please get on better with your neighbours, I'd vote for that. But I'll leave that hanging in the air.
Okay. No further comments. Are we happy? Okay. Are we happy then to take the vote in favour of the application? All those in favour, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in favour. Any against? 1 against. Abstentions? 1 abstention. Well, thank you very much, members, and thank you very much for speakers to being precise and obviously cutting your speaking rights. We've got through the 3 applications, but it was a struggle. And can I formally thank the officers? And we're obviously missing now one of the Pauls. We're missing Sean and we're missing Harriet. So thanks very much for officers that are here. Perhaps you'd relay my thanks to the officers that aren't here for their presentations. Thanks very much, members. And let's hope we recommence at the next meeting on what will be the 18th of March, I suspect. Is that it?